1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Welcome back to the Racial Draft Podcast. I am your host, Michael Ford III, not joined by my regular co-host, Kielisi. She is currently celebrating with the current Super Bowl champions. But I am still joined by other Buccaneers, Carlos from the Latinx delegation and Gordy from the white delegation. Say what's up to the people.
I think I'm offended at being called a Buccaneer. Listen, I'm here. I'm trying to get rid of my pirate white past. So I don't appreciate that. But yes,
I mean, we are both from Chicago, and we are both Bears. So,
well, there were no goats. There were no goats involved in this podcast. Yeah, this is a Super Sunday, and if you guys are all coming down from your Super Bowl highs, maybe you lost some money on some big bets. We are bringing a different kind of Super Sunday to the fray as we draft our superheroes, and we're, as we do every week, changing the complexion of the comic book universe. And let's just jump right into the 10th round. What were you guys' impression of the 10th round of the racial draft? Carlos?
is this the 10th round already?
Sorry, the ninth round.
I was going to say, wait, I've got a number of that I want to make.
The ninth round. My fault. I'm jumping the gun.
You know what? This is the fastest round we've ever had. I think the drafting took about 12 hours?
Yeah, it
Something
was
like that.
less than 24 hours for all the picks to be. People were chomping at the bit.
And again, just because of the diversity in the strategies people are employing, and also because of where the season is going to break down in terms of breaks in comic book storytelling,
Mhm.
it's really varied, and a lot of names coming off my list, but a lot of them was like, I would never have thought to take
Mhm.
such and such characters. So yeah, this has been these later rounds. Once we got past all the automatics, the Batmans and the Wonder Womans, and it's been really interesting to see which way people are going.
And what about you, Gordy? What were your thoughts about the round?
Yeah, I really liked a lot of the characters in this round, and I think that there are a few that are going to surprise, especially when it comes to points and things like that. I like somebody that I looked at was like Silk. But I was thinking last pick, but it's not at this point. It's like the end. It's the end of any other draft. You're just grabbing what you like, and I really appreciated a lot of these picks, and
Mhm.
I'm completely familiar with all of them. There was nobody that I had to stop and think, do they have a book or something coming out? Did I miss something? So
Yeah, I agree.
I thought that was
Yeah, I
what
think
happened.
one. No, I was saying I agree with you. I think one of the things that we've seen in the changeover from season one and season two is that even in these later rounds, there's still the thought process as to which characters are going to pop up, and to that end, it's going to be really interesting when we move on to the FCL scoring portion of the game, because I think that a lot of people have been mindful about these characters and not just picking based on sort of vanity. They're picking based on which characters they foresee being used in the upcoming weeks. For the most part, we're going to get into it, but there are some characters that may or may not we may not see during our scoring portion. Um, but yeah, overall, there were some really cool picks. Like I said last week, there are some characters that I am still surprised are still on the board, just based on visibility and iconic status.
Yeah.
But there's still 3 rounds to go, so hopefully we see those characters in the later rounds, and they may shock people with how they do in the scoring portion. But but yeah, like I liked a lot of these characters. I in general, these are fun characters that do cool things, and even if they don't do a lot from a scoring perspective, they do a lot to fill out the richness of the universe. We're going to talk, in the coming weeks about the racial draft RPG that we have going, and we'll talk about that during the weeks that follow in the draft, and there'll be some interesting stories that incorporate those characters. But yeah, like I like the picks. I think we're gonna get into them one by one, and hopefully in the upcoming weeks they don't fall off. Which we'll just jump right in with the first pick of the ninth round, which was the East Southeast Asian delegation. They of the having the complete Fantastic Four. They have now transitioned from having the complete Fantastic Four to having a big chunk of the Spider family.
Yeah.
They went ahead and drafted Gwen Stacy, but not the dead Gwen Stacy, the ghost Spider Gwen Stacy from Earth
Smart.
65, jumper of universes, Spider
Hey,
Gwen.
I don't think the dead one was going to be featured very much, so I think they made the right choice.
You would say that, but in the past year, there was a Gwen Stacy solo book.
Wasn't
So
it? It was. Oh, it wasn't based on this one. I didn't read it, so I thought it was. I thought that was based on the Spider Gwen Stacy of the rock band fame.
no, it was just from earlier on in Gwen Stacy's time, from before she had an unfortunate drop from the Brooklyn Bridge.
Was it before or after she slept with Norman Osborn and had secret
We
twins?
don't like to talk about that.
Is this the Gwen Stacy who's going to be in Gwenom versus Carnage?
She is in Gwenom versus Carnage. Yeah,
Okay.
she has like it's so I don't know if you've been current on the Gwen Ghost Spider books, but in recent months she's now wearing a symbiote costume from Earth 65, of course. And yeah, so she's Gwen, she's the Ghost Spider, but she's also Gwenom. And now Carnage is the Mary Jane from that
Right.
universe, who's been infected by one of Null's symbiotes. So that book's still gonna go.
Who was that? Null? Who's got Null?
I know. But let me go ahead and jump into the wiki for Earth exactly, or Earth 65 Gwen. In this reality, the radioactive spider bit Gwen Stacy rather than Peter Parker, giving her the abilities of a spider. She goes by the name Spider-Woman, and much like the Spider-Man of Earth 616, used her newly found powers for more personal gain rather than helping people by being a professional drummer. Peter Parker remained a weak individual that Gwen needed to save from bullying. This made him develop an inferiority complex, causing him to develop a serum. Causing him to create a serum to make himself more like Gwen after she revealed to him her powers. This causes him to become Earth 65's version of the Lizard, and Gwen is forced to fight him. Unfortunately, due to the serum during the battle, Peter dies and she vows to use her powers for good. Additionally, Gwen is blamed for Peter's death, and a campaign against her is spearheaded by J. Jonah Jameson. Gwen is a drummer of a band named the Mary Janes, which includes Mary Jane Watson, Glory Grant, and an unknown third member. Wait, I think I know who the third member is. Whatever. Although she is often late for practices and concerts. While out fighting crime, she is also targeted by the police force, who's being commanded by her own father, Captain George Stacy. Like I said, down the line, she is exposed to the symbiote from that universe and becomes Gwenom. And currently, she is involved in King in Black, where her Gwenom persona is doing battle with the Mary Jane, who has been possessed by a version of the Carnage symbiote.
So is this the closest to the Gwen Stacy we see in Spider-Verse then?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. To the extent if Spider Verse came out this year, that Gwen would score points.
Okay.
But yeah, she has, obviously she has a pre-existing relationship with Peter, who kind of looks up to her. Well, not looks up to her, but looks out for her rather. He's vouched for her in this current universe because now she commutes from Earth 65 to Earth 616. She has a friendship slash pseudo romance with Miles Morales, which was a thing that happened. Um, People feel one way or another about whether that's cool, but it's out there. And obviously all the people who remember her from the older Gwen Stacy, the dead Gwen Stacy, like the Jackal, have an interest in what she's up to. So yeah, I don't remember exactly what kind of Asian the East South Asian delegation said that she would be, but now she's Asian, and you know maybe maybe she has some kind of additional friendship with, or additional kinship rather, with Silk now that they're both Asian. In terms of the, what do you call it, in terms of the approval rating, it is 83.4% approval, which is 77.8 strongly approve, 5.6 somewhat approve, 0 somewhat disapprove, and 16.7 pure haters on a strongly disapprove.
It's always interesting when no one somewhat disapproves, but like a sizable chunk strongly disapprove.
Exactly. They're like, no, 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 really, no. I don't somewhat dislike this change in race. Like my blonde princess, she has to she has to stay blonde. Strongly disapprove of the change.
If they haven't named a specific country that she could be from, I mean, I think it's pretty easy to make Gwen a K-pop celebrity now, rather than
I'm
rather than a
fine.
Joan Jett.
I'm kind of fine with it. You
Yeah,
know,
it works.
like again, just another reason for her and Silk to be friends.
Right.
They're like two Korean American spiders. And
Yep.
they're just fans of different K-pop groups. It's just
Maybe some of the hateration comes from fans of the white delegation that are saying, "Hey, stop taking our people. There's so few of them."
interesting.
Just not that I'm leading some kind of hating charge on every pick. No, not at all.
No,
But
not
It's
no,
it
not.
is it is it is crazy how few white characters are left. What are
yeah,
you gonna do?
I know. If only there was a whole universe of white characters for you to for you to draw on.
is it? No, no, not gonna say it. I was gonna say something, and I'm like, nah, that's not the right time for that saying. Let me put my tiki torch down. Hold on. Sorry.
Are you saying that they will not replace you? Is that what you're trying to get at?
Quite possibly.
Oh
As
no.
long as I'm not the one that actually said it, I'm okay
That's
with
right.
Look,
I'm okay.
all I'm saying is that the Spider Gwen costume has quite the drip, and maybe not a white person drip.
Right.
Maybe it's a look that would be better suited for someone of the Asian persuasion. That's all I'm getting at.
Disrespectful to white people.
I'm not convinced.
It's such a
I'm not convinced
drip
that a white
that
person came up with that kind of design. Is what I'm saying.
no. Yeah, no. The only way that
Half of Drake
that
is very
costume
upset
is
by that
possible is
statement.
through appropriation.
Yeah. But let's move to the next pick of the round, which was the Jewish. No, sorry, not the Jewish. The multiracial delegation. They drafted Jennifer Walters, aka She-Hulk. Now, I happen to be a big fan of She-Hulk, so I'm biased. They're, according to Shep, she is now Jewish in deference with with the Jewish delegation who selected regular Hulk, but she's also
Right.
Salvadorian. So as part of the Latinx delegation, how do you feel about a somewhat Latinx She-Hulk?
I'm more than happy to accept half her points. No, She-Hulk's a good pick. It's a fun character. I'm excited for the She-Hulk series. So yeah, I think She-Hulk. I think Marvel's probably going to start ramping up She-Hulk a little bit coming
Hmm.
up.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that they haven't done it too much up until now. Obviously, she
Yeah,
had the one shot that happened after Empire, where I mean, I don't know if you've been big into Immortal Hulk,
I've read a
but
few issues. I can't say that I've kept up just because
okay. I
I
mean,
have to like my comic book habit. I have to keep it at a certain number of titles, or else I'm like a degenerate.
I
Spending $600 a month or something on
listen. I understand. I am quite the degenerate, but
it.
like yeah, Immortal Hulk has been doing really weird and cool things with the mythos,
Yeah,
and they finally pulled She-Hulk into that mythos. So the Immortal Hulk kind of went deep into that.
interesting.
She's connected with the sort of bigger gamma, um, bigger gamma mythology. What's been happening in Immortal Hulk has been the leader sort of quietly building up influence,
I see.
and and there's a storyline that's intersected She-Hulk and the leader. Ultimately, the huge retcon. I don't know if you remember the Civil War II storyline where she ended up getting going into a coma
Mhm.
um, after battling Thanos. Well, according to the retcon, she actually did die because there's a big thing that happens with Gamma people when they die. They, basically are reborn, but with a weird tweak to their abilities. So,
Okay.
what's been happening with She-Hulk in the Avengers books is that she's far more gamma irradiated and far more Hulkish than she's been in other incarnations, and it's been partially explained as the fact that she did die and she came back. The gamma, force, so the gamma energy has brought her back in a stronger force. And she's now much, like I said, much more hulkish and less you know traditional in the sense of like the model look that a lot of people have gravitated towards. But
Yeah, she
that
used to just kind of look like what was the name for the woman from Rizzoli and Isles?
I can't remember the actress's name,
Oh,
but
she was married to Jason Sehorn. Oh, what is her name?
oh yes, yes, yes. Oh, she was also on Law and Order. Um,
Yes, yes, but definitely Rizzoli and Isles is what we should know her from.
oh, that's gonna bother me, so I'm looking it up right now.
I was doing the same thing. I'm like, married to Jason Sehorn. That's a deep. How is that the first thing that you think of? Angie Harmon?
Yes, Angie
Angie
Harmon is
Harmon.
exactly her name.
I actually
Um,
remember when like there were talks about a She-Hulk series literally 15, 20 years ago, and she was like, people were like, she would be perfect to be She-Hulk
Interesting.
because basically She-Hulk was like a gorgeous, beautiful, tall woman who
Hmm.
happens to be green. So I
Right.
like that they're kind of like not afraid to make her a little more monstrous.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of go back and forth. Like, I like what the direction that they've taken the character in the last little bit, but I also like the idea that, big part of Jen's struggle has been that in her regular pre-Hulk persona, she was kind of very mousy
Hmm.
and didn't really feel comfortable in her own skin. So when she becomes She-Hulk, in contrast to Bruce, she looks at herself as, wow, I'm this outgoing, extra um, energetic persona that people really love, in addition to having these model-esque proportions, and like you
Right.
said, just happen to be green. That, like, for her struggle isn't just about keeping her anger in check. It's also the struggle about, like, do I really want to ever change back?
Right.
Because I'm this superhero. I keep all of my intelligence and my wherewithal. Like, why would I ever want to go back to being regular old Jen?
And
You
as we
know,
learned from Wonder Woman 84, that storyline is always interesting and has never been done before.
fair point, fair point. But I'd
No,
like
I
to
think it's
believe.
fun to explore new dimensions though of a character after a certain
For sure.
period of time. And like I said, I'm looking forward to the show, which they're describing as like a comedy. So therefore, I'm just picturing, oh, it's Harvey Birdman, attorney at law, but with Marvel characters, and I'm here for it.
I'm 100% here for it, especially because I did read that Dan Slott run of She-Hulk where she practiced superhero law. I feel like you take that and you throw in a little Ally McBeal, and
Yep.
it's right there for the happening on TV at least. Now, as far as the comics are concerned, I want to see what they finally settle on as far as her status quo, because as
Mhm.
cool as she is in the Avengers books, it's not a solo story, you know.
Right.
And it's been a few years since we've had a solo She-Hulk book, and I don't think they've quite figured out exactly what they want her to be in the current Marvel universe.
Right.
And hopefully they can get that together.
Yeah.
Hopefully they can get Kelly Thompson on board, and she's been killing it out there on certain Marvel books, and hopefully she can do that on a She-Hulk book. But let me dive into the wiki. It's there's not a like I said, we've covered a lot of it in our discussion, but I'm gonna for the benefit of the people who are listening. Lawyer Jennifer Walters was transformed into a gamma-powered superhero thanks to her cousin, Bruce Banner, and backs up her sensational strength with her savage wit and confidence. Her powers include super strength, agility, and, of course, her intelligence as the high-powered lawyer. And her allies include the Avengers, the Hulk, Fantastic Four, Doc Samson, and Lyra. I don't remember Lyra. Um, I will go back. Sorry. And her enemies include AIM, MODOK, the Red Hulk. So, she's firmly ensconced in the Marvel universe, in the Avengers world. Gordy, what are your thoughts about She-Hulk sort of overall?
I'm interested. I love Tatiana
Maslany?
Maslany.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Maslany?
thank you. I mean, Orphan Black
Mm-hmm.
was one of the best things that I've ever watched. I loved it, and so I'm really excited for her, and I'm hoping that that translates into more She-Hulk across the Marvel universe. That Dan Slott run was fantastic,
Right.
and she interacted with every kind of character, from absurd, ridiculous cases to everyday Avenger types to the Matt Murdochs and the other ones that are in
Mhm.
the legal profession. So I'm hoping that this sort of ups her presence, because I've always loved when they've given Jen real characteristics instead of just making her the sexy Hulk.
Right. Yeah,
Right.
and the other thing that, like, we haven't talked about it a lot in the little nerd circles, but she's a major player in the A Force team. And if Marvel ever decides that they want to do that, I could definitely see her in the MCU, being part of an A Force team. And if they ever decide to bring A Force back in the books, she would be a major player there as well. In terms of approval rating, we're looking at a 91.7% approval rating for multiracial She-Hulk.
Wonder
You
where
know,
the hateration came from.
wonder. So that is 66.7% strongly approved, 25% somewhat approved, another 0% for somewhat disapproved, and 8.3%
Poor
pure
me.
racism. So you know, all you Trump supporters, take a bow.
Hey now, hey now. Listen, there are words, and then there's a bridge too far. Okay,
It's
so
the
now
Salvadorian part, isn't it? The
It
fact that she's
is,
Salvadorian.
yeah.
They picture She-Hulk leading a caravan, and they're like, I can't have that. We couldn't
Right,
stop it.
right.
you
It's
know
like we speak English here in the U.S.
in the defense of these random haters, I'm just gonna say, maybe there are certain groups that no matter what they do, they're shooting for maybe 60% approval rating at best. So maybe they just want to knock everyone else down a peg or so. I mean, I don't I don't see it. It's sort of like the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. If Babe Ruth wasn't 100%, nobody's 100%.
Okay, all right. I see where you're going with this.
I know nothing of this. I am blameless.
Many people are saying.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm just reporting words that I see on my Twitter feed.
On 4chan.
Well,
I haven't checked for the racial draft on Parlor yet though, so I'm not quite sure what the
You can't check Parlor.
Right, yeah, we don't like the racial draft on Parlor has a totally different setup.
There are only 2 teams, it's us and them.
Exactly. Oh man, there's way too many slaves on the racial drafts on Parlor.
Their background for White Luke Cage would be very different than the one that I've talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the black delegation, which is appropriate. They drafted, super appropriate, the Black Knight. You know, staying on brand. Dane Whitman.
Dane Blackman now. That's it.
Dane Blackman. He of the Ebony Sword, not to be confused with the Jet Sword or the Vibe Sword or the King Sword.
Jet Sword.
God, now I just want his name to be Black Whiteman, and he just fights people with a rolled up 1982 Ebony magazine.
But yeah, I mean, I got to be honest. I'm not very conversant on the Black Knight. I mean, we do know that he's going to be debuting in the Eternals movie, played by Kit Harington.
Kit Harington, yeah.
Yes. We know that they recently rolled out a solo book for him in connection with King in Black. So like, you know, we've got Black Knight, King in Black, you know, doing battle with, like I said, the Ebony Blade against the symbiotes. I like the fact that he's the Black Knight already, and the Black delegation feels like everyone with black in their name should probably be down with the crew. You know, we have to question why they didn't draft Black Cat if we're going to stay on point with that. But you know, like, I'm here for it. In terms of the wiki,
What's the wiki?
he was raised in Massachusetts, and you know there are black people in Massachusetts, a handful.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was
Antoine Walker's kids, and that's
no, a guru from Gangstar. Like, everyone who played for the Celtics.
Yeah, right.
Born and raised in Gloucester, Massachusetts, Dane Whitman attended university as a young man, eventually obtaining a master's degree in physics. The descendant of a long line of heroes who took up the mantle of the Black Knight, Whitman assumed the role after his uncle Nathan Garrett had resurrected the name to partake in villainy. Garrett was seriously wounded in a fight with Iron Man, and on his deathbed expressed his wish that his nephew might restore the family legacy by making the Black Knight a hero once again. Initially resistant to this idea, Whitman eventually took up the mantle to fight the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, whom he had accidentally summoned to Earth, soon establishing himself as a hero. Like I said, what we know is that he wields the Ebony Blade. He's also had a romance with Cersei from the Eternals. We would imagine that will happen in the movie. We also know that there's a certain amount of insanity that comes with wielding the Ebony Blade, which is, you know, unfortunate again. You know,
Gordy and I just talked about the Black Knight today, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
Today.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It might be a little bit spoilerish because the issue just dropped, but I know that one of the things that Noel reveals to the Black Knight is that it's basically the Ebony Blade was not given to the strongest member of the Arthurian court,
right?
That it was given to the weakest. And
exactly.
The one with
the one who's most likely to be corrupted.
Yes, right. and that the blade sort of, I mean, Carlos and I were discussing it. Basically, the blade sort of feeds off his hero's journey to accepting those inadequacies. and sort of becoming the anti-Thor in that he's not worthy, and thus he can't.
Whoever's the least worthy shall wield the ebony blade.
Right.
And I think that's a fantastic change. Like to me, it opens up a lot more. It opens up a ton of characterizations. You can work with something like that, because the Black Knight was just sort of an Arthurian dude who was there or something or other. There was never anything that mattered about him.
Right. And yeah,
I mean, as I told the Black delegation, the only Black Knight I recognize is Martin Lawrence, teaching Arthur's court about Sly and the Family Stone. That's it.
Yeah. And, I mean, there's a way to bring those together. There's a way to, reimagine Martin Lawrence as Dane Whitman.
I'll admit I didn't look, but if the fan cast from the Black delegation was not Martin Lawrence, there will be some angry tweets sent out later on. Just saying.
I mean, I say you still send out those tweets, and we just figure out how to make Martin Lawrence the Black Knight, and who knows if Will Smith will be like a different knight that collaborates with him, but now, they're bad boys, as it were.
Will Smith will play the ebony blade.
The voice of the ebony blade.
Martin Lawrence, if he's gonna star in it, he needs to be cast with somebody who doesn't take as much HGH as Will Smith. Because Martin Lawrence looking real fat in Bad Boys for Life was a problem for me.
Yeah.
It's got to be like Martin Lawrence and Guy Torry.
Tracy Jordan.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we already know that Marvel has quite the supply of HGH. If they did cast Martin Lawrence, he'd be super cut in 3 months' time.
It might be the best thing to happen to the health of Martin Lawrence. We won't have to worry about him anymore.
And if he was to Kumail Nanjiani, that'd be the most unlikely story.
I would love it. The memes of cut Martin Lawrence would be amazing.
Because it would be different than when Dave Chappelle just showed up after 15 years and he was prison swole. It'd be like, right. No, Martin Lawrence is would have to be ripped and muscles on muscles.
He'd have abs and everything. It would be
yeah.
So in terms of the approval rating, this was a little bit on the low side. It was only 76.2% approval.
Interesting.
With a 28.6 strongly approve and 47.6 somewhat approve, with 9.5 somewhat disapprove and 14.3 strongly disapprove. And I gotta wonder, this doesn't seem like hateration. This might seem like people just genuinely, disappointed in the Black Knight for the Black delegation. So
I think Tisha Campbell saw Black Knight and that she voted. She immediately got people to vote against it and said, "Nope, never again, Martin. No, thank you."
Fair point.
Honestly, I think it comes down to if you were to ask the average person to name 100 Marvel characters, they would not give you the Black Knight.
Right. Yeah. It may be that if this happened after Eternals. Once
Right.
the Black Knight, sort of was had additional prominence, the approval rating for that might be a little higher.
I mean, once upon a time, if you were to ask the average person to name 100 Marvel characters, they wouldn't have given you Rocket Raccoon either. So yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Especially if Kit Harington is going to play this, is going to be a major part of the story, which I mean, I would imagine he is. I think that character is going to be important.
CBR in the lead up of it reported that it's going to be a completely different take on the Black Knight from what we've seen in comics. So maybe something along the lines of the new idea of the ebony sword, where it goes and whatnot, and it being more, because now in that issue, he was throwing it around like Thor throws around Mjolnir.
Right.
So,
good point.
Maybe.
Oh man, he ends up being Kit Harington basically ends up being like a Arthurian knight serial killer. That'd be kind of dope. If he's the villain, that's kind of awesome.
What I think would be cool is if they mention this in the comic, um, this idea of him doing the self narration of himself, of him as the Arthurian hero. Like it would be kind of cool if they made that a gimmick, where
Hmm.
he's narrating as if he's the hero and other people can hear it. I'm like, what are you doing? like, why are you narrating this battle?
I don't know if you guys ever seen the HBO the mockumentary. I think it's called 8 Days in Hell. It's
I
a
have not.
tennis movie with Kit Harington and Andy Samberg. Kit
I've
Harington
heard
is
I've heard of it, but I've not seen it.
Kit Harington is very, very funny in it. I really hope he gets to stretch out in this role. He's not just playing Jon Snow
No, yeah,
in the
that would.
Marvel universe.
Yeah, I'm hoping that as well. And yeah, like I think that fingers crossed over the next 6 months, towards the end of the year, when Black Knight rises to prominence, we'll look back at this draft pick and we'll say, oh, the Black delegation was a little bit ahead of the curve.
Yeah. In the meantime, though, I think the fact that he's getting his own book, and I mean, he wields a sword, he's going to use it. You know, it's not going to be the story of the guy who has the sword and then,
Yeah.
like he's not going to be like Leonardo in the Ninja Turtle in a movie where it's like, I've got these two swords, but how am I going to get out of this net?
Right. And listen, FCL points, you typically get points for using a sword, and you typically get points for using a named weapon. So already that's like, we're already talking an extra 2 points, just for that. So good on the Black delegation.
Cut to me like writing emails to comic book creators like, can you just have can he just call his gun Rodney just for like a couple of issues? I need these points, yeah.
And that brings us to the fourth pick in the round, which is the Polynesian delegation, which was a little. I mean, this pick was a little bit far afield as far as what I was expecting. It's not a bad pick per se, but I didn't expect it, and that would be Hope Summers, who, according to Tamati, is now Rarotongan and Maori. I will go ahead and dive into the wiki for that character. Actually, before I do that, I'll ask you guys what your thoughts are with Hope Summers for the Polynesian delegation. I'll start with you, Gordy.
I mean, I hope that Hope
Exactly.
is. I hope that I hope that she becomes a bit more of a character. I always found her interesting. I
Mhm.
always liked her connection, her connection to Cable and sort of the funness of all the
Mhm.
time travel and growing up, running from Bishop and all of that. But she is someone that I haven't thought of in a while, probably since I read that last run where she just sort of where the Phoenix Force jumped in Avengers versus X-Men. Like I think that's the last time at least that I remember coming across her in a prominent way.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe the Polynesian delegation knew something that I was missing out on, that she will be showing up in the X-Men universe more often than not on Black Akoa.
Well, one thing that you forget is that she's part of the five, right? So she's part of the
Right.
group of mutants that
True.
resurrects the other mutants. Like she's not standing out on her own to the same extent that she was when she was the mutant messiah, but she's whenever a mutant gets resurrected, there's a good chance that she's going to be there and she's going to play a part in that resurrection.
There
You
have also
know.
been a few storylines where Cyclops and his two children are
Hmm.
going, they're oh, let's go see what's on the other side of this island or whatever. So she shows up like a fair amount. I mean, I
Okay.
wouldn't say she's not in every issue, but she does make appearances. Now, does she use powers? Not so much. Like
Yeah.
the resurrecting of mutants tends to happen now off
Off screen.
off screen, as it were.
Right.
So because now that we know how it happens, we don't need to see it every single time. It's like Walter White making meth. Once you saw him do it once, now we can just kind of give you shorthand, and now you know he made some meth.
Yeah.
That's how the X-Men resurrections go now, unless there's something special about that resurrection.
Right.
Now I'm just hoping that there's going to be an issue where Rachel is chasing a fly around the direction. That's
Yeah.
what I want.
And Cable just says, "Magnets, bitch."
No, that
bitch.
exactly. Yeah, Mr. Sinister is out there cooking up clones in his lab.
Yeah.
It's like, I am the danger.
And
There's a
selling them at
pizza.
Emma Frost Chicken Shack. I love it. Let's do this.
There's a pizza just sitting on Krakoa that nobody ever moves.
I'm gonna dive into the Hope Summers wiki real quick. The first mutant born after M Day, Hope Summers is believed to either be the mutant messiah or the harbinger of death for humanity. She is an Omega level power mimic and possesses a connection to the Phoenix Force. I'm gonna. She was born in Cooperstown, Alaska, to Louise Spalding and an unknown man with Cerebro blowing up the moment little baby Hope was born. She was attacked by the Purifiers and eventually saved and raised by Cable. Then she was hunted by Bishop, but she eventually found her home among Krakoa, and now she is part of the Five.
I always
Um,
wonder if she's gonna get the Rey from Star Wars treatment. That eventually we're gonna go, but who was the daddy? And make a big deal out of it when it shouldn't, actually matter. And maybe bring her into some, who knows? Maybe she was a one of multiple man's dupes kids or something like that.
So yeah, that's what I was about to ask. I was about to say, like, if you could choose for like maximum impact, like who Hope's daddy would be, like who would you choose?
Maximum impact.
Black Panther.
Black Panther had a baby born in Alaska. Oh,
Yep.
Wow. That all right. Okay.
didn't see that coming.
No one did. What about you, Carlos?
Let's see. Maximum impact. I would say. I mean, for maximum impact, I would say something like Professor X. Like,
Fair point. Fair
especially if Cerebro exploded when she was born.
point.
Wait, was Cerebro the daddy? That would be the best story ever. Is that Cerebro was a daddy and made sure that she went on this time travel thing so he wouldn't have to pay any child support.
That's it. Yep.
You know what? I'm gonna blow all you guys' minds. I'm gonna blow all you guys' minds. Danger, even though Danger is a machine, that's the daddy.
And a woman.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Danger's
Maximum impact.
Maximum impact.
I'm blown
Danger,
away.
Danger did her thing, and found a way to father a mutant.
I mean, really, if they wanted, if you really wanted to make it maximum impact or something, it would be something like Thor to bring her into the Marvel universe as a whole instead of being in a little corner of the X-Men. But I still expect that. I've been waiting for that story for however long that we have known Hope Summers. Hope, whatever. Yeah, I know. I hope whatever she's going to wind up being. Hope T'Challa.
Wakandan Hope. That would be amazing.
The Great White Hope.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I feel that. But based on
Mariah Carey.
But based on our racial drafting, she's the Great Polynesian Hope now. And according to the approval rating, 92.6% approval rating for Polynesian Hope, including 59.3 strongly approve, 33.3 somewhat approve, 3.7 somewhat disapprove, and 3.7 strongly disapprove. So, shout out to Tomati. People are loving the pick.
I picture Tamati to be some sort of Polynesian Cyrus from the Warriors. He can just he just gathers every Polynesian person of any Polynesian persuasion and just says, vote my way. We can do this if we all move together.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Can you dig it?
Can you dig it? But that brings us to the 5th pick of the round, the Latinx delegation. Psylocke,
Picking in the middle, no matter.
Obviously, I'll leave it to you to explain the pick. But before we do that, what did you think of the pick, Gordy?
I mean, I made fun of Carlos. I immediately texted him that Olivia Munn isn't coming, and Olivia Munn I'll admit, I tagged her in the tweet because I thought she might respond to it because nobody cares about Olivia Munn anymore.
Wow.
You know what she tweeted today?
She
tweeted that Tom Brady is the GOAT of GOATs, which means a lot when she dated Aaron Rodgers. That's dope.
That is shade of shade. Yeah.
That is shade.
Like, listen, I am perfectly acceptable. I'm perfectly fine with casting Olivia Munn as what's his name? As Colleen Wing.
Oh.
As Colleen Wing in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, because I think she didn't do nearly enough in the Fox movies as Psylocke, and I think that she's got personality enough to actually, play Colleen Wing. What, you're disagreeing with me? Or like...
I listen. At one point, I loved Olivia Munn like anybody else who watched G4, but those days are long gone. Woman, the woman that was there on G4, most of her skin has been replaced. She doesn't exist anymore.
Wow.
She's like Nebula.
Yeah. Olivia Munn. We're not making fetch happen there. It's time to let it go.
I'm not saying that she would be a starring character. I'm saying she'd be part of an ensemble, and in that ensemble, I think that she could play off of other people.
I think she would have been a really good Maria Hill.
Interesting.
I think like she I don't know if you guys watched The Newsroom, the Aaron Sorkin show, but like
I did miss out.
She was one of the kind of the bright spots on that show. She could handle Sorkin dialogue, which is like that's master level. Yeah. That's hard to do. Not everyone can do that. So I think there is a spot for her. I just think as Psylocke, it was a weird. It was. I
agree.
Like now, she looked the part, but they didn't even do anything with the character.
Well, that's like I said. I think that's why like her and Colleen Wing, like bouncing off of Misty Knight. Like, did you guys see the Predators movie?
I did.
No.
Did you not like her in that?
I've been out on Olivia Munn since G4 went off the air. I just don't feel
when she was already not there anymore. She was on the Daily Show already.
Yeah. When she was on the Daily Show, I thought she was still funny. I just feel like something in her personality hasn't. She hasn't clicked for me in a long time. I'll admit I didn't see The Newsroom. That's something that I sort of want to watch, but I haven't.
He's very good on it.
Yeah, I haven't seen Olivia Munn be impressive anything in a while, and it is weird that Psylocke's character doesn't matter that much. That we're talking about the actress that played her. So I stick by my negative connotation of this pick.
Well, I actually thought the pick was awesome. I like Juanin. I think that they've done a lot in the last few, like the last year or so, to try to like give her more of a personality and not just be the Asian chick that was get outed by a British white woman. But
what a weird storyline that all is. That's such a when I was writing this backstory, I was just like, I was like Bruce Willis in Armageddon, just ripping stuff out of the drill. It was like, no, we don't need this. What is this? Like, what are we doing?
I mean, look, unfortunately, I know you didn't put it in the backstory. We're not going to talk about it. Well, like, it's there. It's still there. It's still there because Juanin doesn't become, like, prominent, like, in the X-Men world, but for the fact that, Elizabeth Braddock decides, wouldn't it be cool if I was Asian?
Rather than Gwen Stefaniing it and just being followed around by two Japanese girls.
Here's the thing. I know that she didn't choose to be Asian, but when she looked in the mirror and was like, I'm Asian, she was like, kind of awesome, though. Yeah. like if I woke up tomorrow and I looked like a white dude, I wouldn't be like, this is awesome. like, but she looked at this at herself as an Asian woman and was like, I can make this work.
Yeah.
I'm
and
just
Right.
saying,
Accessories.
and like a whole bunch of dudes in her life were like, you're making this work.
Yeah.
So I mean, you just got to own that, Betsy Braddock. You just got to own the fact that that you rode an Asian woman's personality, for at least, I don't know how the continuity works, but let's say it was at least 5 years, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
she was living as an Asian woman. And what I would love to see is like other Asian mutants like going up to Betsy and being like, so like like, are you like, what's your deal?
Just
Like,
Jubilee just being like, it's really fucked up.
yeah, like, so now that you're white, you're just like out on Asian culture.
oh, she's like the personification of a tattoo of a Chinese.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's it. It says hopes. Like actually, it says egg rolls, but cool.
It actually says paper wall garbage basket, but yeah, it totally means life is worth living. Yeah, whatever, lady.
But sorry, Quanon, give us your, actually, let me quickly give you the wiki on Quanon.
There's no way that. Oh, okay. I was like, there's no way that the wiki on Psylocke is quick.
No,
There's
no,
no way.
no. I'm giving the wiki on Quanon, not like
Six sentences long.
Japanese assassin who infamously swapped bodies with X-Men Psylocke, briefly becoming an X-Men. Quanon contracted the legacy virus and died. Got better and got her body back, and now
Got
by
better.
Like,
You know how you could get better from death? Yeah.
yeah, she died, came back, got a little better,
I got
and
better.
yeah, and now she goes by Psylocke, living in the body that everyone recognizes as Psylocke's body.
Jesus. Yeah.
Man, that's a rough run.
Yeah.
And apparently,
No,
like, it all
but don't
happened
forget the
because
fact that she had a run where she was living in Elizabeth Braddock's body.
right.
That doesn't
And
make it
supposedly
okay,
this
guys.
all occurred because the creators of Psylocke were working on X-Men, and then whoever was using Psylocke in Uncanny X-Men gave her an origin that didn't make any sense for what they had written already, and there were no editors to be like, hey, this doesn't make any sense, so now we've got to rectify this.
Right.
So you get this convoluted backstory that just destroys a character for 10 years.
But the weird thing is that, I feel bad for, for our Asian comic fans because, like, like obviously Jubilee was a thing, but other than Jubilee, there weren't really a lot of Asian X-Men. So,
Right.
Psylocke all of a sudden shows up. There's like, this Japanese mutant. And even though on the inside she's British, everyone's like, but she's Asian. Like, we have a prominent Asian X-Men. Like, we're gonna like rock with that.
Yep.
I mean, like let me know. Like, if they had, like, going back to the premise behind the racial draft, like, put yourself in the mind state of what you would have been like in the 90s if they would have done that, but with like a Latina Psylocke. Like, would 15-year-old you have been like cool if all of a sudden there was like a Latina X-Men who actually had like a white woman inside of her?
I mean, unless it was being done absolutely satirically, no. Like that's
Okay.
that's not cool. But if there's like a satirical bend to the story and you're telling some sort of, there's a message to it, and it's not just like I have to make these pieces fit. That's fucked, honestly. Like
Okay.
that's what that is. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I gotta be honest. Like there weren't that many black X-Men back in the day.
was
So
Bishop.
like, yeah, it was Bishop and
Yeah.
and Storm, Bishop and Storm. That's it.
Right.
Like, so I feel like if they would have like done some kind of like body swap thing with a black character, I would have like probably rode with it.
Just to get the black representation.
Yeah.
just to have a character like, but at least he's black.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
You know,
that makes sense.
Especially if the character was like badass. Like obviously, if the character was lame, I would have, no. But like if the character's like completely unrelated. So like apologies to the listeners, but like there's a character named Icon. Like I'm not sure if you're familiar with from DC Comics. Milestone more likely. Like that character is not actually a black man. That character is a shapeshifter from a race of aliens who decided when they came to Earth that they would take on the appearance of humans, and that character chose the identity of a black child. There are a lot of people who feel like Icon, because he appears as a black man, like is part of black representation, even though he's an alien, even though his true form is that of like blue alien. There are a lot of people who consider Martian Manhunter to be black, even though he's clearly a Martian, like that takes on the form of a black man. Like there aren't a lot of opportunities for there being black superheroes, and we find a way to like make it fit for our own. This is a little bit different because it's two humans doing a body swap, but if the character's cool enough, I think that often people of color, often specifically black people, will kind of glom on to the character and say, hey, I mean, we'll accept them into the fold. We don't have a lot of other options otherwise.
Yeah, I guess honest, if I'm being honest, it probably would be where I could totally see myself going that way as well. Being like, yeah, I mean, I'm totally down with Colossus being Puerto Rican now. Like, so yeah, I could actually absolutely see that.
I can speak to experience of knowing 15-year-old Carlos that we would have spent 2.5 hours a night on the phone discussing how to make white person inside of Hispanic Latino Psylocke work. We would have had 15 different theories that we would still reference today, and it would have eventually made it okay, like in the long run of making it okay.
Yeah,
well,
for sure.
So that is transitioned enough into the new backstory for Latinx Psylocke.
All right. It's rough when you write a backstory and Discord's like, yeah, that's like 3,000 characters too long.
Well, remember, you don't have to read it verbatim. You can just sort of.
Yeah, I'll give you guys the highlights. What I did was I took Quanon and I made her Quanon Cortez, the daughter of a Guatemalan general, and I basically wanted to set it in the milieu of the coups that occurred in Latin America from the 70s into the 90s.
Right.
So she's the daughter of this Guatemalan general, and her mother is a Japanese refugee who's got a mysterious past. And basically, as the coup is about to occur, this general is outside of the capital and is about to the next day will be the day that they sack the capital. He gets word that his house, which is basically a fortress because he's a major general, his house has been sacked by the League of Assassins known as the Hand. Right. And that they've killed all his servants and his guards and his animals and his menagerie, and that in fact his wife is dead, but they didn't kill her. She killed herself. And what I then did was wove in the mother's backstory. Aiko was the daughter of an assassin of the Hand. And when she discovered her father was this assassin and that she was kind of destined to follow in that footsteps, she fled. And she went to where she could hide, which was, Latin America. You maybe look for in New York or LA, but she's like, no, I'm going to hide out in Guatemala. She kills herself and leaves an imprint of a bloody hand on her baby.
Shout out to Echo.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I needed like a hand symbol. I was like, there really isn't like a Hail Hydra for the hand. So she leaves a bloody handprint on her baby, which was a sign to the Hand that this baby is to be spared. Like this is like the safe word for the hand. So the hand contact the general, and they basically give him this ultimatum. And the ultimatum is, you can have your baby, but you give up this coup, you give up your life as a general, you go live a humble farmer's life, and you'll be peaceful forever. Or we take your baby, she lives, we take her, and you get your coup. You can continue with your coup. He clearly chooses the latter. So the hand raises Kwannon to be an assassin, and she's deadly. She's cutting down folks from a very early age. She's a prodigy until about the age of 12, when she starts developing mutant powers, and she can now read the minds of the people she's killing, and she can kill. It makes her a more efficient killer, but it also lets her know that some of these people she's killing are not in the wrong.
They're not bad people. Yeah,
right. Which interferes with everything she's known her whole life. So she's now conflicted about this until about the age of 25. She has to kill now the leader of Guatemala, Generalissimo Cortez, and she realizes, because she can read his mind, this is my father. He gave me up. We could have had a peaceful life, but he decided he wanted power instead, which sends her mutant powers to a boiling point. And it's the first time she creates the psionic katana from her hand and kills her father with her own mutant powers. So then I have her leaving the hand and just kind of wandering the earth, trying to find herself, which leads her to both sides of the mutant struggle between Xavier and Magneto, and just kind of always playing her side.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a good take. I think that's like an interesting spin on Kwannon, on Psylocke. Obviously, we talked about this a little earlier, but like, I mean, she probably still gets mind occupied by Betsy Braddock, but like, like
I couldn't touch other characters. Like
no, I know, I like
she
that.
also
Listen.
met Betsy Braddock. Like,
Right. No, I get it. I mean, like, listen, when you made the pick, I definitely put a gif of like Khloe Kardashian being like, like, new body, who this? Like, because that I mean, all that just means a sexy Latina body for Betsy Braddock to be riding shotgun on, but like, at the end of the day, where we are today, there's a Latinx Kwannon, and a Japanese Guatemalan, and I'm here for it, and I think that a lot of people would be here for it, and it just gives her an additional layer of backstory that, yeah, I mean, like, you guys are all reading the Fallen Angels book, I assume. Not the Fallen
I'm
Angels,
not
sorry.
actually. No, I'm
No,
not.
sorry. The Marauders book is. I mean, you're not reading the Marauders book?
I'm not. I'm only on X-Men right now.
Oh, okay, so the Fallen Angels book was her original book, and that was an interesting, like, sort of like, I want to say 6-issue story, where it talked about the fact that she has a child, that she had to sort of put aside in order to like fully immerse herself into the assassin life. She makes a deal at the end of the book with Sinister, which feeds nicely into the Marauders book, which is basically mutant Suicide Squad in a lot of
Right.
ways.
Yeah, like she can't live on Krakoa, so she's got to go lead this group.
I mean, weirdly enough, like she can live on Krakoa, but she still has like her like mission, her like willingness to go out there and kill people. And
like that she physically can't live there. It's like it's like the last cowboys in the Old West. They couldn't civilize.
Exactly.
He's like, no, this isn't for me.
Yeah, and then plus the fact that she has that deal with Sinister, a lot of the other characters are like, why are you so loyal? Why are you so loyal to Sinister? She can't explain that he's basically created freedom for her child, but that's an interesting story, the way it's played out, where she's still the leader, or a leader in the group, but even when she sees that Sinister's doing like shady stuff, she, has to bridge that gap between being a leader for the team and being loyal to the guy that she's pledged her allegiance to.
And this also speaks to why we chose her. It's like she's the leader of a group. She appears in 2 books. Is it Marauders and X-Force maybe that she appears in? She'll be appearing in March and April. And then there's also like maybe she's in a 4th appearance in the Demon Days story. Not sure if that's going to count or not, but either way, with 3 appearances in March and April, and she's, again, she's got weapons. She's going to use them. So.
Yeah, and weirdly enough, I know some of the covers on the books were a little bit misleading, but she has her association with Betsy Braddock, who's of course in the Excalibur book.
Right.
Like in the most recent Excalibur book, Betsy Braddock from our universe was interacting with Quanon from a different universe. But I don't know if people when the solicitations came out, I don't know if people knew that she was interacting with a different Quanon. But the fact that tension is always going to be there between Betsy and Quanon because of the whole oh yeah, by the way, it was hilarious to read where she was like, I definitely took over your body. Hopefully there's no hard feelings.
I would have voted for Obama a 3rd time.
Exactly.
Oh, so, and our fan cast. I'm sorry, I didn't mention that. Adria Arjona is our fan cast.
Now,
and I think she'd be perfect, honestly.
Now, I'm trying to remember. Was she also in one of the G.I. Joe movies? Am I forgetting?
Oh, you're asking me to remember a G.I. Joe movie.
Fair enough.
Not happening. I think she's supposed to be in Mobius.
Oh, okay.
I think she's in that.
What's funny is Psylocke is one of those ones that I hope the MCU gets a hold of her and gives a more gives a backstory that all of us nerds are going to be like, well, that's not the real backstory, but gives her something that is a bit more streamlined and makes a lot of sense, even if it is, she was in the sunken place because of British. I still think it'll be done better through the MCU.
I would love to see the MCU tackle the Hand, but I kind of don't see them doing it.
I think if they bring back Daredevil and they bring back Iron Fist, that's an opportunity to bring back the Hand, especially even Wolverine. Wolverine has interaction with the Hand.
Sure.
The Hand, I could see the Hand coming back, but maybe not soon.
Right.
Especially because the Hand was such a big part of the Netflix series.
Right.
To answer my own question, Adria Arjona was not in the G.I. Joe movies. Like you said, she's in Morbius. She was in one of the Pacific Rim sequels. She was in 6 Underground, which I did like, and Triple Frontier. So she's a big Netflix player, so to speak. But I'm a big the actress. Like I said, I've seen in other stuff, and including those movies. I think she's a great casting, and I'm here for Latinx Quanon. Good pick.
Were we the only backstory that got written this round?
You in fact were.
Man, come on.
I know. People are slipping. People are slipping.
Listen, we have lives. All right, it's been rough.
Well, speaking of people who sometimes put in picks, sometimes put in backstories, the Native American delegation.
I want credit for making sure that none of these picks, the last 1 or 2, have not been auto-picked, because I threatened to take over their picks. I threatened to do what my people have done to their people forever through Manifest Destiny and say that those picks are mine, and all of a sudden we're getting picks. All right.
Well,
so I'm
I think Kia has a lot to do with these picks.
Well, I mean, I don't know if Kia wants to take credit for this one. Cloak, Tyrone Johnson. Did you guys watch the Cloak and Dagger TV series on Hulu?
It has been sitting on my DVR for the day it came out.
Wow.
And it's still sitting there.
It's been 2 seasons, my guy.
I have a lot of it piled up. It's something that I really have wanted to get into, but I'll admit, I mean, I'm only familiar with the comics version.
Well, I mean, I actually did like the show. It was one of those situations where the show was good, but once I knew that most of the shows were ending so that they go to Disney Plus, I was okay with losing it,
Mhm.
but I was, I enjoyed it. Um, like I thought that the chemistry of the actor that played Cloak and the actor that played Dagger actually worked out. But you know, Cloak is a character that doesn't get a lot of major play in the books, particularly when there's not a Cloak and Dagger book happening at the same time. But I'll go ahead and jump in the wiki real quick. Tyrone Johnson is able to access incredible powers that provide him with the ability to teleport and a connection with Tandy Bowen, also known as Dagger. His powers include, so, sorry guys. Hmm?
Yeah,
When
that's
Tyrone
the
when
dark.
Tyrone and Tandy were both transformed into Cloak and Dagger, Tyrone became a being of darkness who could both terrify and shelter people with the power of his cloak. With Dagger by his side, he can stay in balance and protect those in need. His powers include fear manipulation, teleportation, and life force absorption. And his allies include Dagger, of course, Spider-Man, and his enemies include Carnage, Mr. Negative, and Shriek. So yeah, the Native American delegation did not provide a backstory, but they offered Cloak, who is interesting character. And I definitely there's some room for a cool backstory for Cloak, but
Yeah.
we I'm curious actually whether we'll see Cloak in any of this like King in Black stuff.
I think I counted one appearance for Cloak and Dagger.
Mm,
I think they are going to appear at least once.
yeah. So what about you, Gordy? Were you a fan of the character?
I've always liked them, and they've always. The problem with them is that for a long time in the '90s, they're always tied to all of the anti-drug stuff
Yeah, yeah, that's
Marvel
fair.
that Marvel was running. Like, yeah, like under Quentin, they were the anti-drug heroes, and no
Right.
one ever really played with them since then. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, I know that they've had changes of backstories and they've had a bunch of start and stop books, but I'd like to see. And I'm just gonna put Cloak and Dagger together because it doesn't feel right with one and not the other. But
Right.
I also think there could be a lot of interesting things to be mined there if someone at Marvel, Jason Aaron or whomever,
Hmm.
some writer, some good writer, Kieran Gillen, uh, took a deep tried to take them on a deep grab or try and sort of reinvent them. I think there's a lot there. It's just one of those. It's just one of those ones that everybody I think knows who they are, and if you see it, if you were a fan of any comics during the '90s, you know who they are. But they also just sort of stayed there with
Right.
Darkhawk and never really changed.
Yeah,
They
I mean,
appear in the early Miles Morales books, right? Like the
Yeah,
earlier, like
well,
right
I
after the origin story. It's like, and then Cloak and Dagger.
I think they were in the it are we talking about in the Ultimate Universe?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think there was a version of them in the Ultimate Universe.
I think
I
their
also
origin might be in the Miles Morales books, like
in the
their
Ultimate
ultimate
Universe, yes.
origin.
But like, because there was some question about these different factions that were trying to create super soldiers. But I think in the
Right.
mainstream universe, of course, they had their connection to the Runaways in their story, and then of course that same thing played out in the TV show that there was a crossover between Cloak and Dagger and the Runaways. Um, the only thing that's a little bit off-putting as far as like the racially drafting of Cloak and Dagger is that they're so tied to this idea of this like black and white um, couple
Yeah, yeah.
that um, like I don't know, it's a weird thing because they don't really talk a lot about race in their books, but we, it's been such a thing for the history of the characters that you sort of associate them as one of the like weirder, like interracial couple superhero
And
groups.
like it's fun because I always thought that there's positives and negatives to that. Like I
Mm,
always liked the idea that it wasn't the forefront. They were just an interracial couple. Life moves on, and it's
mm,
not that big of a deal. But on the other hand, I would love to see that sort of take that become a plot point and be made into something interesting to give them some more relation to the real world.
right.
But
Yeah.
I mean, those are all sort of pipe dreams. I mean, for me personally, I hope I know who
Mm.
the Native American delegation is taking in the next round. I hope they complete the set.
I mean,
I would like, I would like to see a Cloak and Dagger, maybe a revamping of that story that sets it in a time where a black man and a white woman would be dangerous,
mm.
even more so than than.
I mean, I feel like the time when they were originally created, it was a little bit more dangerous,
Mhm.
It's less so now. But
Right.
again, as someone who watched the show, I thought that they did an interesting thing with fleshing out the characters, because you had the black kid who was trying to be upwardly mobile, and
Sure.
trying to like transcend the racism that he experienced, and then you had the white girl who was less upwardly mobile and was like on the street doing like dirt and stuff, and she was using her privilege like to her benefit while she
Yeah.
was like I said, as a fan of the show, I thought that they did interesting things with race in the story. um
It's so weird that all the Marvel shows are going to be connected now. That you're not going to
yeah,
have like these outside things like Cloak and uh Hail or Mail not Mail
Hellstrom, yeah.
Maelstrom. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's the last one that's not going to be connected. It's just weird. It's gonna be a different universe, and I feel like we might lose some of the more creative projects on the side
I
Yeah.
because
mean, like imagine a Disney Plus series like Cloak and Dagger. It's set in the 50s,
Hmm.
and they're kids, and it's like the Defiant Ones, but it's Cloak and Dagger,
Right.
and then like if you do, you want to do, say you bring her back for your Riri Williams show, but
Hmm.
now they're grown. Now it's like
Right.
they're 70 years old. Now they're
Yeah.
they're they're the mentors
they're
rather
Right.
than
they're a
when you
little
watch
past
their
grown.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
They're like grandparents.
yeah, they're way past grown. They're
Yeah.
they're,
Yeah, but
they're on their way out.
you can yada
But
yada in a way. Their superpowers slow down their aging factor.
I mean, that's
Past
that's
40 year
what
old.
everyone does. But yeah, like just
Right.
if you took that racial dichotomy and dynamic and put it into like a time set where it's like this is a major factor
Hmm.
in what's going on in the world. Not that race isn't a thing right now, but like a black man running around with a white woman who wears, dude wearing a cloak,
Hmm.
like uh, maybe possibly into the occult in like 1958. Like that's rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I do think there is room to like, if especially if you're gonna use Hulu as a platform, I think there's room to tell like standalone stories in that
Mm,
on that platform.
That'll be apt.
Especially if they were going to do period specific, you know,
yeah.
um, like if you wanted to do like a one and done Cloak and Dagger story on Hulu, where, like you said, it was placed in this time frame, or any kind of period piece where you want to explore this character outside of the modern day setting, like
Yeah.
Hulu might be the right place to do that.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, like, imagine if you made Cloak and Dagger like the Nick Furies of the Champions,
Hmm.
for instance, So now they're the grown old, mentors. But now we get to see their origin story play out in like the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
I think that'd be awesome. I think it'd be really, really fun.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, like I feel like every book that I read with Cloak and Dagger in them, they're never like comfortable in the spot that they're in.
Right.
They're always a little bit of a struggle. Maybe it's just because of the way the Cloak's powers work. That he is carrying around a dimensional portal
Right.
at all times, and the only thing that like keeps him a little bit grounded is Dagger. Like they have this thing where they're like in a relationship, but they need each other. It's like a very codependent thing,
Yeah.
and it's hard to stabilize them.
which could make such a great, interesting storytelling device. If you make the way that I've always wanted to see Cloak and Dagger was that, but they don't like each other, or
Yeah.
maybe they had a relationship and it went sour,
Yeah.
and like there's so many things that can be played with there, and they could be such an interesting, little side story,
Right.
somewhere in the Marvel universe, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was an interesting Cloak and Dagger run from a couple years ago where they had like recently broken up, but like they still
Oh, I
needed,
remember that.
yeah, they still needed each other though, so it
Right.
was like awkward because like Dagger started dating somebody new, but like Cloak would just show up like, hey,
You gotta do your thing, yo.
yeah, exactly.
I love it. I love it. It's like breaking up with somebody and deciding who gets the dog. You don't know what to do. Like we've all said, there's a lot of story to be mined there if Marvel decided to give the Peter Quill treatment to one of these lower characters.
Right.
Yep.
But so real quick before we move on, the approval rating for Native American Cloak was 90%, including 60% strongly approve, 30% somewhat approve, and 10% strongly disapprove, with 0% somewhat disapprove. So somebody's out there very pro Native American Cloak.
Could be fun, and I mean it could definitely lead to interesting backstories.
Hmm. But this brings us to the white delegation.
What, Wiki?
You're up. The white delegation, Wally West, the Flash. So first off, give us your thought process behind the pick.
Flash 200, I believe, is coming out in March, and it's
Mhm.
supposed to be the retirement, as I did the little air quotation marks, of Wally West, which he has got to be one of the most crazily used characters of the past 10, 15 years, especially in DC.
Yeah.
But my thought process was, I've always liked Wally West. His backstory, especially the way it's been messed with his kids that are no longer there, but then are there and were taken away from him, and all of that. It's a story I've always liked, and I'm hoping if they are maybe putting the character on ice for a bit, he's going to pop up in a lot of books to say goodbye, on top of having I believe it's a double-sized issue that's supposed to be his send-off. And there's DC loves to throw flashes everywhere, so I'm hoping for some random appearances, and who knows, maybe they'll have him kill a bunch of random people and then somehow not get blamed for it again. I mean, you never know, or they'll make him Dr. Manhattan again. I mean, Wally West could be anything. He could be Null. We don't know.
I mean, like,
He's Hope Summers' father, is what you're trying to say.
Exactly. He jumped universes, impregnated.
That wouldn't have the most impact.
I mean, so like, full disclosure, I was reading comics in the 80s, but like, when Hal Jordan, sorry, when when
Parallax.
I mean, yes, the Hal Jordan thing happened also in the 90s, but I was more thinking about Barry Allen. When Barry Allen died in Crisis on Infinite Earths, you know, that was a thing in my early childhood. But then, you know, when I really got into comics, Wally West was my Flash. And, you know, to see the arc of how that character has progressed, and then to see the return of Barry Allen kind of push Wally West, you know, to the background, it's been disheartening and disappointing. But I feel like he has enough of a fan following that he'll never go away for good. However, it's hard to it's hard for DC to figure out where he's supposed to fit. And like you said, you know, this idea of him retiring, um, it's you know, it's tough for a lot of people to like a lot of the Wally West fans to accept. You know, making matters even more confusing is that when they did their New 52, they introduced an additional Wally West. Now, like, listen,
Wallace
here
West.
as you know, the racial draft here, we in the racial draft support all race bending, and I think that there was an idea that introducing I think he was supposed to be multiracial, but maybe just black. Well, it hasn't been fully fleshed out as far as like what his mother and his father are. Um, but when they introduced the other Wally West, who eventually became Wallace West, you know, this was a black um, Flash, which again, big fan of. But they wanted to sort of kind of reboot his story, and that didn't take. It ended up not taking. So now there are two Wally Wests. There's the younger Kid Flash, and there's the Wallace West the Wally West that we all know and love from all the history, and it's really made things even more complicated. And I think it's DC's trying to figure out how to make it all fit, make it all work. Um,
Yeah, I thought they were when Wallace West. We'll just
mhm,
say it to make it easier. When Wallace West debuted in New 52, I thought that was going to be that was it. I thought that the Wally West, because I'm from roughly the same era of getting into comics as you are, and I thought that was going to be the end of that Wally West, and you know I was okay with it. Like Barry Allen's here, Barry Allen's okay. It's okay if we let that Wally West go. I wasn't such a diehard that I clamored to bring him back, but then he did come back, and I thought the story of the man sort of displaced for the New 52 and losing as much as he did was an interesting story, and it was fun. It gave a gravity to he Wally West, and his story sort of made the blanking of the old DC continuity real life. You know, you
mhm,
felt that, oh, there are real life losses. You know, it's not just Superman losing a stupid collar or
right.
gaining a stupid collar. You know, and I thought that was great, but then I mean, the story should have ended with either Wally getting his family back and fading off into the sunset, or dying. Like, yeah, you when you bring up a story like that, it has to have an end. And DC, I feel like, just didn't pull the trigger, and thus we got Sanctuary Wally West and his weird murders that I'm 99% sure I understand, but there's still part of me that I'm like, but how is that not his fault? And he's not
Yeah.
what? And then Dr. Manhattan Wally on the Metron chair, and he's sort of become a really bad plot device, which is sort of the theme of this round between Wally West and Psylocke.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a part of me that wouldn't have minded if they found a way to merge the two Wally Wests, and then you know just have like, again, bias, like have like going forward, Wally West just be black.
So
Um,
you want to put a white man inside of him? I don't know.
no, no, no. I'm just saying that if they had merged the two, you know, and like created a new reality where there was a Wally West that had like all of the memories of all the different Wally Wests, but was, not a kid, but he was black, then that would encompass some of the like the
Yeah.
best of both worlds.
I mean, I wish that they would have just created a character that wasn't named Wally West in the New 52 and
Yeah.
let him be like, that's that weird, like trying to tie in, these new characters to the, like he could have just
Yeah.
been called any other name and given us a new character, much
Hmm.
like Miles Morales and like many other characters we've seen that have shared names and shared these things.
But the issue with the New 52, which is it's the weird flaw of the New 52 was that they weren't supposed to go back, like they
Right.
weren't supposed to
Right.
incorporate the previous continuity. So
Except for Batman,
except for Batman, of
where it's
course.
like everything happened.
Yeah. Like, so when they introduced Black Wally West, he was supposed to have the arc that White Wally West had. Like, he was supposed to go from Kid Flash to, Barry dying and then pick up the mantle and then, become the Flash. Like, it's only because they decided, we're not going to stick with the New 52
We're
that
never
they
going to kill
then, what'd you say?
Barry again. I think when they decided they're never going to kill Barry again because
Yeah.
his Q rating went up so much with the CW show and with the Justice League and being one of the only like palatable parts of the Josh Whedon Justice League. There was no way. So, yeah, I mean, I see that and I wish that would have happened, but it didn't. And now we've got Wally West retiring for
Yeah.
hopefully, in my estimation, hopefully for a while. Let's put him on the shelf and let him be. And maybe, in a few years, if we decide to kill Barry or something like that, then we can revisit him and see what Time Away has done from the superhero game.
Well, see, I mean, what's weird is that, like, like I said, I'm a fan of Wally West, um, so I wouldn't mind a situation where you just like put him somewhere where he wasn't in conflict with Barry Allen. Like you had him be in space, or you had him be, in different universes.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's gonna have to be space or a different universe because if he's anywhere on Earth, Barry can be there in like a minute or whatever
Right.
the ridiculous timing is.
Or even send him to the future with like the Legion of Superheroes or whatever. Like where like he can still be like awesome, but
Yeah,
you
because
know,
Future State Flash has sucked. So
oh, I don't I don't want to talk about that trash book because it didn't work for me on any level.
no, I don't think it worked. I don't think it worked for anybody besides the wonderful people who wrote it. But yeah, that there's a hundred different things that could have been done with Wally. But I can say to bring this back to the draft
Hmm.
that I'm expecting a lot of Wally in
Yeah.
March. I'm expecting him to pop up. He's got connections to Titans. He's got connections to the Green Arrow side of
Hmm.
things. Got connections to even the Bat family, which while they are all Latin now, that
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, like, so here's your opportunity to talk a little bit about what White Wally West, like, because let's face it, there is a history of Wally West being a little bit on the conservative side. So is is this Wally West a little bit little MAGA, little.
I mean, one of the things that I'll admit that I didn't, my real life got in the way this week, and I didn't get into a lot of the backstories that I've been working on. But one of the things that I thought about was Wally West is a bit meta. He's not, ultimate cap or anything,
Right.
but maybe, and this hurts my soul to say it, and I wish it would come from one of the two of you, but let's just be honest. Maybe stories about the MAGA types that don't always paint them as the worst people in the world
Okay.
would be beneficial
Okay.
because
He just likes my pillow. What do you?
Yeah.
Listen,
I mean, he doesn't have to be the most extreme. He doesn't have to be like Trump supporter. I get it. Like he just
well, I
has to
mean,
be like, like a little bit to the right wing.
some of, I mean, and that's one of the things I was playing with. It's sort of a hard line to cross, but they're like invoking the horrible. There are good people on both sides, but there's no way on earth that all 71 million people who voted for Trump are bad people.
Right, right.
As much as I want to believe it myself, and as much as I will scream it to anybody who tells me they voted for Trump. I high-fived a friend of mine because she celebrated the day she broke up with her boyfriend because she found out he voted for Trump, and she dumped him and left him in a Red Lobster.
At a Red Lobster of all
Yeah.
places.
Yeah, so we celebrated the anniversary of that day, but yeah, I mean, as much as I want to say it, I have family members that vote for Trump that I argue with, but I know aren't bad people.
Right,
So
right.
I thought about trying to get past that to show this Wally West as someone who's misguided, because I'll never say that supporting Trump is a good thing, but
Right.
somebody who's misguided
Hmm.
and doesn't understand the world around them the way they should,
Right.
but yet still does heroic things.
Hmm.
But I'll admit that was a Herculean effort of trying
Yeah.
to write it, and I struggled. I struggled mightily. Thus, we don't have a backstory. We may get one before.
Well,
We
what
may
we
get one
what,
before the end of the round, or before the end of the draft. But I'm
yeah.
in the
Well,
lab. Let's say.
Well, what we know is that, based on like the way the draft is set up right now, is that we have a multiracial Barry Allen, and there is a little bit of room for white Wally West to sort of have his resentments, have his sense that, like, as a white man in America in the current day, he might feel certain kinds of conflicts that he can't 100% relate to with multiracial Barry Allen. He might, he, like you said, he could be misguided
Right.
politically, specifically. Like, he could still be a hero, and he could just have his biases and have his pitfalls where, um, you know, like, I wouldn't necessarily take it as far as he votes for Trump, but I could definitely take it as far as he's, you know, a Republican.
Yeah, I
He's
don't know. I
Or
get
he's
it.
one of
Like,
those like Joe Rogan listeners who like, I'm above politics. I think both sides are
I don't
awful,
see.
so I don't vote for anyone.
I don't see color. All government is bad. Blah
Yeah,
blah blah.
right.
Blah.
yeah,
Joe Rogan libertarians.
exactly. Yeah, libertarian Wally West. Yeah, I can buy that.
I've
I
got a
just think you should make
biracial
him
friend named
Wallace
Gary.
West and then have D'Angelo Barksdale showing up being like, where's Wallace?
Oh no, I mean we do that all the time with Black Wallace West.
Yeah. Yeah, where's Wallace at?
Where's Wallace at? String, where's Wallace?
Ray, where's Wallace at? Anyways.
So in terms of the approval rating, this is a little bit on the high end for you, my guy. This is
Listen,
a 70.6% approval
Oh,
rating.
we broke 70.
I
70.
believe this is the only pick of the white delegation that has broken 65, let alone 70.
Yeah, 70.6% approval rating, 5.9 strongly, 35.3 strongly approved, 35.3 somewhat approved, 5.9 somewhat disapproved, and 23.5 strongly disapproved. I'm going to call them haters. I'm just going to say that these are people who would have wanted a Black Wally West, but that's still high. That's still high for the white delegation.
That's like so high, we might have to investigate it like GameStop.
I'll admit I'm not out there. I'm only out there getting votes to make sure that the black delegation had to grab America Chavez. I'm not out there getting votes here.
But yeah, that was a strong pick for the white delegation. Remains to be seen how things will play out in terms of the books. But
I think like I said, I think he's going to give me a month of strong points. I don't think he'll be null, but I think he'll be in that ballpark. Because what I
Oh,
need in my
wow.
life, what I need in my life is more texts about how Noel's going to score a lot of points in March.
Noel's going to score so many points in March.
Yeah, he really is. So that brings us to the next pick, the 8th pick of the round. The Jewish delegation, they selected John Constantine. Now, obviously, in season 1, you guys remember that the Latinx delegation drafted John Constantine. He didn't do a lot for you guys points wise, but I thought it was a strong pick, and definitely we got some good art out of the situation.
Yeah, Constantine versus Ghost Rider was like the best piece of art, I think,
Yeah,
from this
exactly.
season. Yeah.
But I'm here for Jewish John Constantine. I'm gonna dive right into the wiki. John Constantine the Hellblazer is a working-class magician, a cult detective, and a golden-tongued con man. He's well known for his scathing wit, endless cynicism, ruthless cunning, and constant chain-smoking. A roguish counterculture anti-hero, Constantine is also a strident humanist, driven by a heartfelt desire to defend mankind from the forces of evil. He was born in Liverpool, but he could still be British and Jewish,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm here for it. I thought that was a cool pick. I think he's, a major player in, both his own books and Justice League Dark, and he just kind of pops up here and there, smoking his cigarettes. He's probably, I don't know when Legend Tomorrow's coming back, but he's got that role. He had a movie, he had his own TV show. Like, John Constantine, being Jewish, I'm here for it. What about you guys?
I wrote, when we were supposed to be talking trash, I couldn't talk trash about this pick. It's like the fact that he's Jewish, a foreigner, and into the occult. Like, I just pictured Marjorie Taylor Greene's head exploding upon seeing that. It's like he's perfect, and he's kind of punk rock. I love this
Yeah.
guy.
What about you, Gordy?
Good pick.
I mean, the only problem is that he doesn't have the technical know-how to man the space laser.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, it's a magical space laser, apparently.
It's a demonic devil space laser.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I also thought it was a great pick. I think it makes sense. I think there's a whole backstory of positive and negative of Jewish mysticism that can be played with there. And I think I think it's a great choice, and I think it's something that could have been a part of John Constantine this entire time, and we didn't. It was just we were never privy to it. So I thought it was a great pick.
Yeah, and I'm always a big
it's an
fan.
unfortunate name, given Constantine set up the Holy Roman Empire. It's rough.
Yeah, but I'm always a big fan of a racial draft where like it could have been there for the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Like that to me is always like as far as a draft pick that doesn't really require a huge amount of upheaval in the backstory.
I think the Jewish delegation likes their mystics. They enjoy their mystics.
They've really gone strong with magic in this season.
Do they have Scarlet Witch and Zatanna as well?
Both Scarlet Witch and Zatanna. Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't have Doctor Strange. That is the South Asian delegation, but I'm sure they feel a way about it. But yeah, in terms of approval rating, 87.5% approval, including 50% strongly approve, 37.5% somewhat approve, 0% somewhat disapprove, and 12.5% anti-Semites, of course. Yeah, a good pick for the Jewish delegation. John Constantine is probably going to score some points. Especially now that post Future State, there's going to be Justice League Dark stories paired with the Justice League stories. I'm sure he's going to pop up in those, and he's gonna do his thing.
Yeah, and we were discussing it. I was looking up the exact, because I knew it was coming. Season 7 of of Legends of Tomorrow was just okayed on February 3rd.
Yes.
So like I because I know that we had said it, but I was like like it did just happen, didn't it?
Right.
So I doubt they'll be getting that on the air in that short of a time. But it's good to see Constantine stay around, and Matt Ryan's portrayal of him, I think, has been fantastic. I enjoyed the NBC Constantine show, and I've enjoyed him on Legends.
It's
I
so
agree.
weird to see the CW's renewals come out, and it's like, where's Supernatural?
I mean,
just
15
weird.
years of Supernatural. I mean,
Yeah.
eventually they had to let it go.
I feel like I've
Yeah,
had to.
it's just weird not to see it there. Like
Right.
that's like a staple of the renewal sheet.
Yeah.
I feel like I've like had to like jump and be crafty, but I've never actually watched more than like 5 minutes of Supernatural.
I've watched a couple of episodes of Supernatural, and all of them are in waiting rooms.
I've never seen literally any of Supernatural.
Right, like I feel like you and I have this is something we've had to work at, maybe even subconsciously, just because there's 140 episodes or whatever there is of it over.
Oh, there's got to be way more than that.
I don't know how long the seasons are because I know nothing about Supernatural.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. They're CW shows, so they may be 23 episode seasons. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I'm familiar with the show and I'm familiar with the actors on the show, but I've never actually watched the show.
There are 327 episodes of Supernatural.
Wow. That is crazy.
The idea that there's 327 episodes of a supernaturally themed show and I haven't even brushed against it shocks me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so like I said before, the 9th pick of the round, South Asian delegation, came through with a little bit of a banger, if I'm being honest. Polaris, Lorna Dane, daughter of Magneto.
I feel like everyone says they're the daughter of Magneto.
Fair point. Magneto gets around. According
like
to the
Magneto
wiki,
and Sean Kemp. That's a throwback reference.
Nice.
Yeah, I was like, stop aging us, bro.
So according to the wiki, the mistress of magnetism, Polaris, is the daughter of Magneto. She has been a member of the X-Men, X-Factor, and Genosian acolytes. After being married for several years, Lorna's father, a pilot named Arnold, discovers that she is not his daughter at all. While piloting a plane carrying his wife Susanna and daughter Lorna, who is 3 years old at the time, Arnold confronts his wife about her affair. Hearing her parents argue, little Lorna gets upset and starts crying and screaming for her parents to stop arguing. Her mutant powers uncontrollably manifest. She unintentionally rips the plane apart in mid-flight. Lorna survives the crash, but her parents do not. Drawn to the crash site by the magnetic pulse Lorna had unleashed, Magneto finds Lorna and orders Mastermind to rewrite Lorna's memories via illusions. The initial manifestation of her powers turns Lorna's hair from brown to green. She keeps her hair dyed so as not to seem different from others and become ostracized. It seems that there's a genetic defect in Lorna that prevented her latent mutant abilities from manifesting earlier. When a villain named Mesmero uses his sight generator, which allows him to command all mutants in North America with latent powers, Lorna is drawn to him and forced to travel to San Francisco to unite with Mesmero. Yeah, Lorna, aka Polaris, has an extensive history with both the X-Men and X-Factor. She has her romance, of course, with Havoc. She's been in movies. Well, sorry, not movies. She's been in TV shows like The Gifted. She has not yet popped up in the movies, but she's a very popular character. And now she's, according to the books, she's the only daughter of Magneto that he recognizes, because the other children were retconned away.
Yeah,
the only one more he could pin him on was Polaris.
Exactly.
You take back that Sean Kemp reference. Magneto understood that rubber stops magnetism.
Hey, I'm sure Sean Kemp has one one kid that he recognizes, and the rest of them are in dispute.
I do think it's interesting that like is he the only mutant whose child has the exact same power of his?
I mean, yeah, I think I think that's the only time it's really happened. I mean, I guess Legion and Professor X is in the ballpark. Like they're psycho they're why can't I think of the word? Their psychological powers. I mean, normally
Psychic?
psychic, yeah.
Yeah.
Duh.
Psychological powers.
Listen, guys, we're doing this after the Super Bowl, okay?
I mean, I suppose Wolverine and Daken maybe,
yeah,
comparable,
yeah,
but
they both have healing factors or
yeah,
have
and
it.
they're both somewhat feral. But like Magneto and like it's weird. Like as a child, I was sort of against Polaris and Magneto being related because of how their powers were basically the same powers. Like I didn't think it was very imaginative to have a child that has the exact powers as a dad. But
I mean, like, not a mutant anymore, but Wanda Maximoff and Wiccan would be.
yeah,
But not a mutant anymore, so it doesn't
exactly.
count. Yeah.
And also not, yeah, that story is so weird.
Exactly.
Yes,
like
yes.
like a
Kids.
weird, yeah.
It's Psylocke weird.
Yeah, like when we talk about WandaVision in a little bit, stay tuned. That is a tease. Like we can get into that, but like, yeah, it's rare. Like so, I thought it would have been cool, like definitely when I was younger to have like, Polaris think that Magneto was her dad, and then to be like, actually no, you just
In
have
my
the same. You just have the same powers.
yeah, in my younger days, I was always hoping that she was going to be a clone.
Oh, I didn't even thought about that part.
That was what I was always hoping, she was just going to be a gender swapped clone. Oh, another one is Superboy, Connor, or not Connor, because Connor doesn't count because he's got the baby daddies. Jonathan Kent basically has the same powers as Daddy to a much lesser degree.
Right, but the thing is, like, that's more DC. Like in terms of like the mutant abilities,
True.
like we're meant to believe that it's a little bit more random, and I like the randomness of it. Like I love when two mutants get together and don't have a mutant at all. Like a Graydon Creed type deal. Like it. Like I like the idea that it's not a perfect science.
Yeah, I mean, it plays into the entire allegory of people being different and you not needing to adhere to the stereotypical story that life plays out in front of you.
Yeah.
All of that, yeah, but Polaris is one of me. I mean, I made a gifted joke on Twitter when the pick was made. Like, she also is somebody who just sort of shows up. She for me, a lot of times I feel like she's used as a plot device more than a character in Marvel, and I mean, she's one that I've seen Magneto's story, and it's so powerful. It's such a part of everything X-Men that seeing his kid daughter who didn't have anywhere near the same struggle, it doesn't leave a lot for me to feel like I want to see this deeper version of her. I'm much more interested in most of the characters that we've talked about today besides Polaris.
Well, actually, yeah, I just thought about that. So Magneto is part of your delegation, the white delegation, and Polaris is part of the South Asian delegation. Like, how do you see those two, squaring that circle?
I mean, we've it's hard to do. It's another story. I mean, we've talked about this on the podcast. Whitewashing some characters is hard to do if you have a soul.
Hmm.
And like I could never put Marky Mark on the Wall of China. I just couldn't do it. So on the Great Wall of China, excuse me, proper title. It and you know I can't. I don't have a Last Samurai story starring Tom Cruise inside of me. So a lot of these are hard to look at. I mean, I've had some real ideas. I mean, look, with all of my white delegation characters, it's real easy to just say, well, they were an angry white person and now they hate all people of color and make them all white supremacist, you know, a-holes. But that's a bit redundant and
Right, right.
not true to Wally West or true to, you know, Magneto. I mean, it would be God. It's a complete opposite for Magneto.
Yeah.
Um. So yeah, I think our white non-Jewish Magneto, wherever his life has taken him, that maybe had him run through a few countries, and maybe, you know, our Magneto wasn't as proficient with the condom as MC 616 Magneto.
Yeah, maybe this Magneto got like a bit of a tan, you know. He like, and he went to some of the South Asian countries, like hooked up with someone, you know. Like, listen, we already established that Magneto in last week Magneto lied about being Jewish. Maybe he
I
lied,
heard,
like maybe he lied about being South Asian as well.
I
And
heard. I swear on everything that I thought about that when I drafted him, because I drafted him. I'll admit I drafted him purely for points, and because, as you guys talked about, like everybody was like, "So when are we gonna take Magneto?"
Mhm.
Uh, you know, I've tried to make it a point to sort of grab some of the characters like Luke Cage and Magneto that when you talk about it, you're like, "Well, you can't change it.
Right.
Like you can't change it because." I mean,
That's the point of the game.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's the point. And even if it isn't something as easy as White Wally West, it's discussions that need to be had. So I thought about it, but man, that's another one of try. It's because one of the things I think, if anybody rewrites Magneto, and Carlos and I have talked about this between us many times, how do you change Magneto for the MCU? Because if he was in World War II and he's still here, I
He's
mean,
got to be
some po-
old.
right at some point, the yada yadaing of the age has got to come to. There's got to be a reckoning on that.
Yeah.
And it's not like, you know, not to take anything away from the Holocaust, clearly, but it's not like that's the only time that there's been an ethnically cleansed group here on
Yeah.
Earth.
But that's clearly the one that, like, unambiguously, like, pretty much everybody is against.
Right. Well,
You know.
yeah. I would hope that most people are against all ethnic cleansings, but
No, 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 no. I mean, they
Every once in a
are,
while.
they are, but they're like, you know, that's not everybody learns
right.
about
And
the
that's
other.
something that I really thought about with White Magneto. Like, do I want to shed light on the Bosnian ethnic cleansing? I don't need to name which ones.
Yeah.
Then it sounds like we're ranking them, but
Right.
yeah, like that ethnic cleansing.
BuzzFeed list top 23 ethnic cleansing.
Yeah.
Which ethnic cleansing are you?
Yeah, it's a
I can guarantee that got pitched at BuzzFeed at least.
exactly.
I
Yeah,
got the
that's.
Armenian genocide. Oh,
Oh
okay.
man, wow, yeah.
But the point does remain that there have been many other atrocities that
Hmm.
maybe don't have the scope of the Holocaust, but have the horror.
Right.
And
Yeah.
maybe highlighting some of them with a newer,
Mhm.
updated Magneto would make sense. But also, Magneto is definitely one of those characters that it just betrays my soul to not make him the
Yeah.
World War II survivor, regardless of age and or logic. I mean, I don't envy the MCU writers that are going to be tasked with this soon, because you can't have the X-Men without Magneto.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, in my own kind of like headcanon slash retconning slash like trying to come up with a story that would like work in the MCU, like the idea that I usually fall back on is that, like, you know, he did live in the Holocaust, but somehow he was captured and put into some kind of suspended animation, like kind of like an evil Captain America type deal,
Right.
where like he came of age in World War II, but because of like anti-mutant whatever, like they took him, they experimented on him, they slowed down his aging, they did that stuff, and then he gets out in the present day, and he's that much more upset because he's had to deal with decades of being experimented on.
See,
You know,
I've come across things like that, but I think part of Magneto, a part of what always is, because I've loved Magneto since I've liked comics. Part of what I've loved about him is that he's seen so much and he sticks to his beliefs,
Mhm.
and he's not 100% wrong.
Right? But that's what I'm saying. Like, so there's the idea that like as conjecture, mutants will be treated the way that Nazis treated Jews, you know? But then there's like the possibility that having experienced a little bit of that as a mutant, that he would know firsthand that if left to their their own devices, if left to our own devices, as it were, people would do wrong things with mutants. I
Right.
think that you could play that out and it be credible that having already been experimented on, that he knows that he's got to make sure that that doesn't happen to other mutants. You know?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've always appreciated about Magneto is that he looks at humanity and he understands that it's trash.
Yeah.
And no one can, like, even Charles Xavier, he doesn't sell him on the fact that that humanity wasn't trash before.
Mm.
He sells him on the hope that we will no longer be trash.
Yeah.
And if you freeze him, it's hard to do that, because then it becomes he's reading about stuff instead of living it and knowing it. And while I
Mm.
mean, there's going to have to be something done,
Right.
or if not, maybe, hint hint to WandaVision later. Maybe we're just going to smash him in there and ignore all of that. But who knows?
Yeah.
We will see. But I think if he hasn't experienced it, I'm not sure how the character can have that same perspective.
Right. Well, I mean, here's the thing. What I like, one thing that makes me different from a lot of people who are fans of Magneto is that I still want him to be villainous, you know? And one thing that I like about Magneto the villain is that he, even though he has experienced what he's experienced as both, a Jewish person and a mutant, like he still adheres to the idea that mutants are the superior species.
Mhm.
He still believes in, like, weirdly enough, he lived through Nazis, but he believes in the idea of a master race. He still thinks that mutants are superior and that they should rule. And and you want to have that dichotomy, right? You want to have that idea that like he's seen the worst of humanity, but he does still want to rule humanity as a mutant. He still believes that that the non-mutant human is lesser than, even though in his own experience he's seen what happens to people who are viewed as lesser than. Like he's not as far gone as Apocalypse per se, but he still believes in the supremacy of mutants.
Hey, now, new Apocalypse was just getting mutants ready for. He was actually fathering them into being tough enough to handle the real world, or whatever the retcon is.
Yeah, that sounds like some serious Apocalypse apologism.
Like, I
I think
loved
my favorite moments of Magneto in an X-Men movie is it the third one? Yeah, it's the third one where the first time they tackled the Phoenix story,
Mhm.
where Xavier gets disintegrated, and I think it's Pyro is like good riddance, and Magneto's like, that man has done more for mutants than you'll ever do. Like
Right.
the respect that is still on his name, even though they were at odds.
Yeah.
I love that dichotomy. And so yeah, I think that the keeping Magneto villainous is important, because that the fact they're friends but they're enemies is so rich. It's such a rich text. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this shows that the child of Magneto, who we did not talk about at all, is not interesting.
No, I disagree. I mean, we talked about her. It's just that, like,
She's got green hair, and she was on a bunch of creepy posters in the 90s.
No, we just didn't get a big backstory for Lorna, but we know that, like I said before, I don't think she's as interesting as Magneto's daughter, as she is as like her own character with her own motivations that happens to have Magneto's powers.
That gives me that could be a way for the MCU to do it, is flip them and have Lorna be Magneto's mother, who was in the Holocaust, and then carries on the stories, and that way you don't have to yada yada aging.
Yeah, but
I mean, I know you hate the multiverse, but Magneto could also come from a universe where the Nazis won.
Marvel won't even say Nazis. They'll call it Hydra. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Is they're gonna, as I'm scared, they're gonna have Magneto be in a Hydra camp, and I'm like, come on, dude.
But you know how awesome a story would be if there was just like a story of Captain America and Magneto fighting Nazis? That'd be incredible. That'd be so much fun.
I mean, yes, it would be fun. Like, so a few years back, I mean, sorry to listeners, because we're getting right up into like some fan fiction, but whatever. You're here for the ride. So like the idea that I had was that like there was a world in which Hydra won, right? There was a world in which Hydra identified mutants and then successfully implemented the genocide of mutants. And that's the world of the MCU. That like they figured out what mutants were, they figured out the X gene, and they successfully got rid of the X gene. So to the extent that Wanda like discovers that mutants were a thing, like she discovers that like was a thing, like that mutants no longer existed, but there was a time that they did exist, and then she uses her powers to like reverse that.
That might be in play.
You know what I mean? Like
WandaVision talk at the end of the show. Don't we have one more? Do we have one more pick?
Yeah, we have one.
No, that's it.
That was the last pick of the round.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, let's table that briefly. But like that was something I considered, not a world in which Wanda brings about mutants, but a world in which Wanda erases the eradication of mutants. Like what would the world have looked like if mutants were not genocided?
There's so many. It's gonna be so interesting. It's gonna be so interesting to see what happens. I hope that it doesn't just I hope Michael Fassbender doesn't just show up one day.
Yeah.
Later, Gordy.
Later.
But I'll do the thing. So since we're at the end of the round, Michael, who is your favorite pick of that round?
That is a good question. So before I answer the question, though, I do need to say what the approval rating.
That's right.
Was. So this was the highest approval rating of any pick. 94.4% for Lorna Dane. 50% strongly approve, 44.4% somewhat approve, 0% somewhat disapprove, and 5.6% strongly disapprove for South Asian Polaris. So,
wow, congratulations!
Yeah. Congratulations to Polaris, top pick of the round in terms of approval rating. I think my favorite pick, if I'm being 100% honest, might have been Quanon. Might have been Quanon.
Yeah, boy.
What about you, Gordy?
I mean, I definitely like the Black Knight pick. I
Mm,
think I love a character that's getting a mining of a different story. I think it's interesting, and I think he's going to be all over the place, much like some like Null and Wally West. Damn it!
Never heard of Null. You think Null's going to be in a lot of places?
I wonder if the Black Knight will be the giver of the killing blow to Null.
ooh.
I think it's got to be Venom.
Mm,
I think it's got to be.
If it's Venom with the ebony blade, maybe the Black Knight is hanging out behind, going woo and get some more points.
I mean, maybe the symbiote, goes to the Black Knight and encompasses him and allows him to imbue the Ebony Blade with that extra killing power.
Maybe.
We shall see.
I think my favorite pick, since you guys asked, my favorite pick is what?
No, nobody asked you. We were
Yeah, I know. That's what I was thinking. I think mine is Gwenum. I like Gwen Stacy.
Yeah, Gwen Stacy was a solid pick as well.
Yeah, I dig Gwen Stacy.
It's a fun round where the three of us don't really match up. We don't have none of us are on the same page, which that's good. I mean, that's where the end of these drafts should be. It's fun that everybody has a different vantage point.
Right. But I
think the best rounds were like, wow, I didn't have any of those people on my list. Interesting. I think that's good.
But let's dive into the news for the week before we dive into WandaVision. If you guys haven't watched WandaVision, shame on you. But hopefully you will pause the episode when we start talking about WandaVision, watch it, and then come back and listen to our discussion. But
don't wait to binge WandaVision. Keep up with it. It's fun to watch a show every week and think about it way too much.
Way too much.
So I got to say that the biggest story of the week, from my perspective, was that Ryan Coogler signed a 5-year deal with Disney for television, and he will definitely be doing a Wakanda series for Disney Plus.
That's interesting.
There is not a lot of detail about the series, but as someone who did read the World of Wakanda series in the comics, there is a lot of hope that he will find a way to tell interesting stories in the world of Wakanda, and I'm here for it, but I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts about it.
Do we know the time frame based on like when Black Panther 2 is supposed to come out versus the Wakanda series?
So I want to say that Black Panther 2 is supposed to come out in 2023.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of that's been thrown all over the place. I mean,
sure.
Right.
I would assume that the Wakanda series is going to have to follow Black Panther 2, regardless.
Oh, sorry, 2022 for Black Panther 2 as of yet. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we'll have to see who is the Black Panther before there is the Wakanda series. I mean, I would assume.
You see, I kind of feel differently. I feel like there are different directions that they could go with the Black Panther series, with the Wakanda series. And one of the directions that they could go is more of an anthology direction, where they just explore the history of Wakanda, leading
I could
up.
see that.
Telling stories of the previous Panthers, telling stories of T'Chaka. There's a lot of room that they could cover, while not stepping on the narrative of Black Panther 2.
And I was thinking, like, if this is coming out before Black Panther 2, which it doesn't look like it will, this could also be where you set up an original character to eventually become Black Panther.
Yeah.
But if it's coming out afterwards, obviously that wouldn't be in play.
And the thing is, even if they end up doing the anthology style series, that's where you could introduce a character like Casper Cole, who is not like the Black Panther, but could be like, Black Panther adjacent,
Hmm.
and you could tell his story and then tie him into the mythos. Particularly if you decide to do like Black Panther 3, you'll have like the fleshing out that happens in this series
Right.
that, that could build out to whatever direction. I mean, obviously none of us know where they're going to go with Black Panther 2 because of, the tragic passing of Chadwick Boseman. But, I think we all want Black Panther 2 to be as rich and as compelling as the first one.
Right.
Um, but it's good to know that they haven't completely forgotten about Wakanda being a place of interest. Like like I I want to see the Dora Milaje get their stories told. I want to see obviously want to see Shuri again, but I do want to see these earlier stories. I want to see M'Baku and those kind of characters kind of get fleshed out, and I think a TV show might be the better way of spinning that out.
If
Wakanda's
it happens, I mean, it could also be like the story of the Wakandan intergalactic empire.
Yeah, I mean,
Could be that.
like I personally, like I would love that to be Black Panther 3.
Hmm.
I've been reading that story, and that's been my own, like, if you ever decided that you wanted to recast T'Challa, and I know that there's some controversy around that. Like the intergalactic empire of Wakanda is a great story to do that because of the fact that you have this person who has had his memory wiped, and he has to rediscover like who he was. Like you could do that in the context of a recasting.
Yeah.
And if it happens 3 or 4 years down the line, I think that a lot of our pain of losing Chadwick would have somewhat subsided, and we might be ready for a recasting, in 2026 or 2027.
Yeah.
In a
Yeah.
way that we're not 100% ready for it right now.
Yeah, I don't know, man. That's just it. I think that T'Challa is just a movie character that's going to leave with Chadwick.
Hmm.
I just can't. I can't see it. I mean, I've thrown out a bunch of dumb ideas and whatnot, but I can't see it. I would love that story to be I would love that story to be brought over to Disney Plus and the Marvel MCU, but I think you just do it with a different character. Like I think that someone will I think if I were going to place a bet, I would say that we will get somebody who is very T'Challa, but is named something else or has some kind of other story in the MCU, and they'll leave that go
Mm.
because Black Panther was such a cultural milestone across everything. I mean, there's Wakanda jokes in the new Coming to America.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah.
So it's become such a cultural touchstone that I think that everyone who's ever seen a Marvel movie will have an opinion about a new T'Challa, and I'm not sure that that's the land that Marvel wants to venture in.
Yeah. I mean, like I said before, I think that it's too raw right now, you know, but
Right?
I
I mean,
think that,
he's
you
still
know,
going to be winning Oscars this year.
yeah, but I think that 3 or 4 years down the line, we might feel a little bit different about it. So I'd rather table it than just say like for all time, we'll never have another T'Challa, you know,
Right.
because I
Yeah.
don't think they're killing T'Challa off in the comics anytime soon, you know.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah, so
If that was going to happen, I think that would have happened already.
if he's still going to be a character that we invest in, and people want to see and want to see further adventures from. Like, I think that, like I said, right now is not the time, but in a few years' time, people might be like, they still want to pay tribute to Chadwick Boseman, but they also want to give people who are attached to that character the opportunity to see more stories,
Yeah.
you know.
It's
But
great. It's great how interesting all of the future Marvel prospects are lining up to be.
yeah,
There's so much intrigue and different ways that they could go with, Doctor Strange in a multiverse, with Black Panther 2. There's so many questions to be answered. That, even Thor 4
hmm
has, a lot of questions that it's great. It doesn't feel like it did at the beginning of the MCU, where I'm like, well, okay, now we're gonna get Thor, and
hmm
he's gonna fight the Destroyer or something in the first movie, and they'll throw Loki in somewhere, and we all sort of saw the framework. I'm glad that
right.
now I see nothing. I have hopes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it feels like everything's open to us,
Yep.
And speaking of everything being open to us,
Oh,
we recently had an announcement of the Blade movie.
Hmm.
Um, that they found a screenwriter. Stacey Osei Kufur will be the screenwriter for the Blade movie, which I don't think still doesn't have a release date,
Or
but
a director, right?
not a director yet.
They got
Yeah.
a screenwriter without a director. That's interesting.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think that we'll, in the next couple months, we'll probably find out who the director is. But having a script is important.
it's a
Yeah.
weird,
Um,
weird
Make a
process
movie
for the
without one.
entire Blade. For the entire new Blade. Like, we had a star before we had any kind of staff or
hmm
even a venue. We talked about this off air before we even knew if it was going to be a Disney Plus series or in the
We
MC.
might we might have had a star before we had a movie,
Yeah.
because the word on the street was Mahershala Ali was just like, I want to be Blade, and they were like, okay, we can make a Blade thing.
Yeah. They were like, "Oh, we didn't have any Blade plans, but okay,
But I
well."
mean, yeah. So
I feel like somebody was like, "Hey, did you clear that with Wesley? Because we don't want you getting in any trouble."
Yeah. Wesley has to worry about his tax burden though.
right.
Not anymore. He's clean now. Don't you besmirch the Demolition Man. He's good now.
He
He's a
wasn't the Demolition Man. He was the villain of the Demolition Man.
That's right. Good point. He was Simon
Simon
Phoenix.
Phoenix.
Yeah. Simon Phoenix? But yeah, like so there it is. We have a screenwriter, and we, like I said, she has worked on Watchmen, which was
Yep.
critically acclaimed. She also worked
episode
on,
7, I believe.
what did she say?
She wrote episode 7, I believe.
Okay.
I saw that today, and I didn't have them. I've been meaning to look and see which one was episode 7, but I will leave the listeners to find that
hmm
and be impressed or unimpressed.
Yeah. She also worked on the show Pen 15, as well as Hunters and the show Run. So she has a fair amount of experience as a staff writer, but not as a main writer. But this is her opportunity to really, kind of come into her own. And the scuttlebutt was that Mahershala Ali kind of gave his endorsement because he was involved in the process of selection. So
Yeah, this is clearly his baby.
yeah.
Yeah.
That Marvel's like, cool.
Mm.
We will ignore that. He might be the reason that we have to ignore the Netflix series, because they just they don't want any remnants of Cottonmouth hanging around. He was so good in that.
I was
Yeah,
about
he
to
was
say, he's
really
so
good.
good in that.
Yeah. But
That's
I mean, he's going to be good as Blade as well, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, he's great
Yeah,
in everything.
yeah,
I mean, he's great as Uncle Aaron in Spider-Verse. I mean,
Yeah.
he's great.
So I'm here for it. Another, this is less of like a big news story, but it's another thing to kind of like talk about. We had on if you're listening, it's the day after the Super Bowl, but we watched the Super Bowl tonight, and we saw the trailer for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and we were all hyped about it. And Don Cheadle confirmed that War Machine will appear in the Falcon and Winter Soldier series. How do you guys feel about that?
I was hyped for the trailer. I know that opinion may not go through this, but I'm all about Lethal Weapon Cap Shield.
Yeah. Buddy cop superhero show. Yeah, I'm here for it as well. Carlos, you might feel a little bit differently.
Honestly, it just was like, okay, like, man, I don't know. Like, it seemed, WandaVision is such a weird story. Like, it's such a weird format that they're working with, and they're really thinking outside the box. And this just feels like so very much inside the box. Like,
right.
I will watch it, and I'm sure it will be fine and adequate, but I don't expect to be excited by it. And honestly, Don Cheadle being like, "Don't worry, I'm in it too." Like, okay, War Machine. Not honestly, I love Don Cheadle. Real talk, I don't think he was a great roadie. I don't think it ever seemed like he and Tony Stark were even like best friends. It never seemed that way.
It's weird that you say that, because like I actually thought that he and Robert Downey Jr. had better chemistry than Robert Downey Jr. and Terrence Howard. But at the same time, now that Robert Downey Jr. isn't around, I'm somewhat on your side of things as far as like a solo character. Like, I'm not as enthused with War Machine as a solo character as I was about him, bouncing off of Robert Downey Jr.
He also hasn't bounced off of Robert Downey Jr. in such a long time anyway. Like even though he's there and they're both in the same scenes, really, Rhodey hasn't really operated as purely Tony Stark's best friend since like Iron Man 2. It's been a really long time. So
I don't know. I love the whole like Tony Stank thing, from Civil War. Like that really worked for me, and like, but I know what you mean. Like it hasn't been just the two of them since Iron Man 2.
Right.
Remember an MCU that was so small, that was so lightly connected that they trusted Terrence Howard to an important role? A long time ago.
Yeah. Lucius Lyon.
I think the best line in the entire MCU might just be Don Cheadle's first line. It's like, "It's me. I'm here. Get over it." Like, that's his first line in the MCU.
I don't even remember that. I didn't.
Yeah. And it's like, it's such a meta, like, yeah, I'm not Terrence Howard. Let's go.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't mind if they again, love Don Cheadle. Don Cheadle, if you're listening, big fan.
I love Don Cheadle.
Yeah. But if they recast Don Cheadle, if they recast Rhodey, wouldn't be mad at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't see him dating Carol in this universe.
Nope, can't see it at all. And if you're out there, listeners, if you're out there shipping Don Cheadle with Brie Larson, don't do it. Doesn't work.
That feels real weird. But
doesn't work.
Is that the only major recast from like
the Hulk?
Have
the Hulk.
Man, I forget it. We got through that entire She-Hulk part where we talked about earlier, and I totally forgot to bring up that I hope it brings back the leader, because that's the only thing from that movie that I wanted to see again. But I'm gonna get Abomination. Cool.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm fine if they recast the leader though.
I can't remember the actor.
Tim Blake Nelson, I believe, was the actor. He was fine, but like, he doesn't necessarily give me supervillain vibes.
He's from a different era, honestly, like where these movies felt smaller.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I really liked Ed Norton's interpretation of Bruce Banner.
I really liked his Bruce Banner. I really, really did. And it's unfortunate that he sounds very difficult to work with, and that sucks.
Yeah. I was gonna say there's no way that Ed Norton shows up in Avengers Endgame as just sort of figured everything out off screen, and now is
Nope.
smart.
Exactly.
No way.
No, he'd be like, we
Yeah.
need an entire movie for this.
Exactly. Like the problem is that like Mark Ruffalo is better in an ensemble,
Yeah.
whereas Ed Norton is better in a solo movie.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
like once they realized that they weren't doing more Hulk solo movies, like the right move was the transition to Mark Ruffalo.
Mhm.
But it like I rewatched a few weeks ago. I rewatched Incredible Hulk, and I was like, damn, he's so good in this.
Yeah. I like that movie. I think it's a good movie. I think,
Yeah.
the ending of it, the last act falls kind
Yeah.
of apart, but that's just what happens in a lot of Marvel movies. The last
Yeah,
act.
especially first phase Marvel movies.
Yeah. But I mean, Gordy, we watched Incredible Hulk in theaters together. And when we left, we were like, when he grabs the cars and wears them as boxing gloves, I was like, this is everything that I want from a Hulk movie. I like I can't say I'm disappointed.
Hulk, I'll admit that Mark Ruffalo and Hulk surviving Endgame was sort of a shock to me, because I thought for sure, since the licensing issues and
Hmm.
all of the muck that Hulk is in when out in the real world, I honestly thought that there was no way he was making it through, and that we would maybe get Amadeus Cho
Hmm.
Yeah.
eventually in the MCU, and then that way they can have a clean, totally awesome Hulk.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still crossing my fingers that we do see an Amadeus Cho in the MCU, especially now that they're doing everything they can to introduce some of these younger characters. It would be disappointing if we didn't get an Amadeus Cho in the next 3 to 4 years.
Going to be a legal intern at the Jen Walter, or the Jen She-Hulk superhero.
Or he could have been a science intern at with Hulk when he became Professor Hulk.
Or he could be an astrophysicist from a
He
certain
could be an
Oh.
aerospace engineer.
aerospace.
Oh, let's do it. Let's do this thing
Let's
then.
do this.
Let's do this, guys. If you have not watched this week's WandaVision, this is your sign off for the podcast.
For real.
All things are possible.
For real. Like, for real. It's
But
if you're a comic book fan, like, think about, like, look, we've got three nerds here. Think about the last time you looked at a comic book movie and were genuinely surprised. Like, what? Hasn't happened in a while. So please, if you haven't watched it, please go. Just
Yeah.
go.
Pause the
Go.
podcast, watch the episode, and come on back and join us. But we are going to talk full spoilers for WandaVision. And go for it. Go for it, Gordy.
Okay, let's whatever. Did she grab Quicksilver out of the other universe, out of the X-Men universe, or is this just Marvel fucking with us with a casting that'll get us all nerded up for a week and make sure that we watch everything that happens in the rest of WandaVision? Like, that's what I want to know. Like, it.
So I think it's number two, but I also hate multiverses. So
there is compelling evidence to it being number one.
yeah.
And that
Yes.
is that the descriptive audio of the episode, this is super nerdy now. The descriptive audio of the episode states Wanda stares at the version of Pietro from the X-Men films.
That's a tough thing to argue against.
Yeah, like if you put on I read that in like a whatever Screen Rant article or something, like that cannot be true. And I put on the descriptive audio and I checked it for myself, and sure enough, it says Wanda stares at the version of Pietro from the X-Men films.
Yeah, I mean, that could also just be Marvel selling it as the casting, because they know the moment of that casting is that moment where Pietro shows up. While it's shocking that her brother is back from the dead, clearly the moment is who it is.
Yes, it's the casting.
Yeah.
But if she did yank him from, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Mike. If she did yank him from the other universe, how does he know who the hell she is? Because
Yeah, that's what's tough about it. I mean, it's granted it's still WandaVision, right? It's still her like
it's still
show. It's still her
was it
show.
was it because the credits had already rolled?
Yeah, but I mean, like, she still has her power over the universe.
And
You
there's
know,
still audience reactions when you see him and
yeah.
stuff like that.
Right.
So like it doesn't have to be for me, it doesn't have to be the Pietro from the X-Men universe, but it could still be a Pietro from another universe, if they wanted to go that route.
Sure.
Like it could be, you know, like people were saying, you can't bring your Pietro back, but you opened up the door to other versions of Pietro, and this is the one that you pulled in. Now, I heard another theory that said that, like, because they're in the 80s,
Right.
you know, that was the Pietro from the 80s.
I thought that
Right.
was the
Because he's
90s.
in he's in Days of Future Past and Age of Apocalypse, right? So those
Yeah,
are
exactly.
so the
So Days of
70s and
Future Past
80s.
was the 70s, and Age of Apocalypse was the 80s. You
Yeah.
know, that like it's her Pietro, but because of her like a low level ability to re reconstitute things from the time frame, that she created a new Pietro, but it was a Pietro from the 80s.
Right.
Yeah, and also Darcy saying she recast Pietro made me go, "Oh, is it Marvel just messing with my soul? Like,
Yeah.
are you just messing with me, Marvel?" Because Evan Peters was the best part
Mm.
of Apocalypse. Because I actually enjoyed Days of Future Past, but Apocalypse was straight trash, and I thought he was the best part. Clearly, that is not an opinion shared here.
Well, I mean, it's more about the fact that I just the movie, like the Apocalypse movie, was just bad, like all around to me.
Yeah,
So it's hard to like point to like his scene, his like one scene, and say that he was the best part of it.
it's easy when the movie is trash, and when the next best part I could come up with is the aforementioned Olivia Munn
Mhm. Well,
and her
like I s-
cutting through a car
and then
psychic blade.
still dying. But like I guess part of it is that I had a problem with the whole way that they interpreted Quicksilver to begin with in the X-Men universe, in that Fox universe.
You didn't
So it
like
was
the
hard.
moody teenager.
I didn't like the moody teenager. I didn't like the fact that he clearly didn't age in 10 years. Um, I didn't like the fact that he was Peter, like,
Right.
he was just some guy in America who Magneto was his dad, and he had this it was like he didn't feel like a comic character. Like he felt like a complete creation for the purpose of the movie, and I didn't like the way that they conceptualized his speed as basically stopping time.
Hmm.
Both in Days of Future Past and in X-Men Apocalypse. Like it didn't feel like a speedster. It felt like, hey, let's just defy all the laws of physics. You know?
See, I mean, but uh, speedsters do that. Like in if you take the Flash and put him in the real world, he's murdering everybody because especially how overpowered the Flash
Yeah.
is and whatnot. So I I get it and I understand it, and it was a little bit cheesy, and it was clearly played for laughs with the everything freezing and him
Exactly.
giving people wedgies and whatever the hell else he was doing. But it also sort of speaks to, if you can run, faster than the
Yeah.
speed of light, like at that point, it doesn't matter. There needs
Yeah.
to be some sort of cap to make
Right.
any.
But it just again, as someone who read a lot of like books with Quicksilver in it, that's never been how they portrayed his powers,
No.
you know? So like it just didn't feel authentic to the character.
I mean, who is Pietro without his sibling rivalry?
Yeah.
And and that, to me, that always bugged me. But I just enjoyed Evan Peters, and I thought that it was fun especially in an era when that came out and we were dealing with the horrible DC EU that has no
Right.
joy. So the joy of a character just being fun sort of gave me an endearing love for him.
Yeah. No, I get
I
that. I
think
mean, I think for me, sorry to cut you off, Carlos,
no
but like
problem.
for me, it was just a matter of like he was a fun character if I could divorce like the idea that he was supposed to be Pietro Maximoff.
If you weren't a comic book nerd,
Right.
yeah, I get it. I have that problem with MCU Spider-Man.
I think that getting back to WandaVision, I think it's possible that he's not even, he doesn't even make it past the next episode.
Yeah.
But it just speaks to the fact that she wanted her brother there so badly that she was able to pull a version of her brother from another universe.
Yeah.
Like I don't think it needs to be where he's gonna stay for the rest of the series or that now he's in the MCU for good. Just like it just shows that she is weakening the seams between the universes.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, but that's a huge move, regardless.
Huge. Yes.
Like even if like you said, even if he doesn't stick around, just the fact that she has the ability to pull a character from another universe
And
has major ramifications.
Yeah.
The acknowledgement of the X-Men Fox universe, which we have to. I mean, Carlos and I discussed this. My dream in the next episode is I want to see Chris Evans come in as Johnny Storm.
Ah.
and give me Jessica Alba, and especially if the idea that these random whatever this is going to be isn't going to stick around and they're going to fade back to their own universes. I mean, hell, we could see Eric Bana's Hulk.
Yeah. I mean, all that stuff that you suggest, like a part of me is kind of like, oh, that would be crazy. But then another part of me is like, I don't like, where does it end though? Like a part of me scared of the fact that like all the rules get thrown out if you just start pulling in everybody from any incarnation of any Marvel character, Like it's the same reason why every time I read a story about Spider-Man 3 and who might cameo in that, like a part of me as a lover of Spider-Man is like, it could get crazy. It could get so crazy that it stops being comprehensible.
Spider-Verse opened the door to this, and I think on screen it's definitely going to be easily explained and shown, especially if Marvel is working with the idea that they don't have to backstory any of this. Like they know that we've seen the movies. Everybody who's seen Spider-Man has probably seen the Sam Raimi Spider-Man.
Yeah, but I mean I get that. But the thing is, what happens if you actually want to introduce those characters? Like everybody that you throw in as a like fun fan service whatever cameo of like from the previous Spider-Man movies, like potentially burns their ability to introduce the character in earnest in
Right.
MCU.
Yeah, we never get the MCU Doc Ock because we've now seen the Raimi Doc Ock.
Right.
So like, yeah. So now it becomes redundant.
Yeah, and that's what I worry about. Like I was looking forward to seeing like a Sinister Six who was organic to the MCU, but if they start pulling in like, oh, here's Electro, here's Doc Ock, here's Green Goblin, from all these different universes, then it's kind of like, well, like they're probably not going to introduce those characters in the MCU.
See, I'm okay. As much as I love it, I'm okay with that. I've seen Electro. I've seen,
But they were all shitty.
yeah, but I mean, you gotta at some point. I'd like to see like for Spider-Man as a spectacular, pun intended, example. There's his rogues gallery is so vast and deep that if we don't get a Doc Ock and we don't get another version of Electro, it's completely fine. There's 12 other fantastic characters that we could get. We could get, and I mean, we don't have to read them off, but we all know, and there are better, maybe more suited to the times versions of villains that we need, instead of seeing, instead of it being like the DCU and seeing, we can all name 5 Jokers.
Mm-hmm.
And then the question doesn't become how good was the movie or how good was how was the character. It's how great is this Joker compared to Nicholson? How great is this Joker compared to Cesar Romero? Blah, 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 blah. Nobody ever gives a chance to the Jared Leto Joker because he looks like a juggalo. It could have been.
I like the Jared Leto Joker. I'm just going to put that out there. I also think, though, like, if you start counting how many villains we've actually seen in the Spider-Man movies, like, there have been a lot. Like, even just in Homecoming alone, it was like Vulture, Scorpion, Tinkerer, Prowler, Shocker, 2 Shockers.
Exactly.
There were a lot.
And that's the thing. I liked all those different takes of those characters, and I'd like to see more. But once you start pulling in, like, oh, well, let's get Sandman, let's get, Green Goblin from all these other movies. Now we're forced to say, like, are they organic to this universe? I mean, again, listen, we don't know. Like, for all we know, it could just be the same actors, but playing MCU versions of these characters.
Yeah,
it could also be like the CW Crisis, where it's just like literally a 12-second cameo.
Yeah. And if it ends up just being that, then I'm less concerned about it.
Like, if they were able to recreate a scene from a Raimi Spider-Man movie, let's say recreate a scene between Doc Ock and Spider-Man, and all of a sudden Tom Holland shows up and then disappears right away, and then Alfred Molina is just like, what was that?
Right.
And that's your entire appearance. Like, that works.
Right, and that's a good point, because we don't actually know what the plot of the new Spider-Man movie is. Like, all these things could be very brief cameos, and like you said, it could be like the DC Crisis, where it's you see these Spider-Men of these different universes fighting the villains of their respective universes. But what I'm concerned about is just the idea that, like I said before, when you open up these doors into the MCU, and if these characters end up in the MCU, what that could mean for the possibility of seeing these characters in earnest. In that
you might also see something like a Sinister Six that's built across universes.
And I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah. I know how you feel about that.
Right. Yeah. Fair point. I know how I feel about it. I'm anti that.
Yeah. But I mean, you might see something where it's like Willem Dafoe's Goblin and Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus and Jamie Foxx's Electro, like, and just built across the multiverse, including the multiverse that they appear to be building with the Sony films, like, the Jared Leto, the previously mentioned Jared Leto vehicle, and Venom, and
how do you say it? Is it Moebius?
Morbius. I just say Morbius.
Yeah. It's okay. I've just always, it's just one of those things that in my head never sounded like I thought it should sound.
Yeah, it's Morbius the Living Vampire. Like, that's how he is to me. But like what's weird is that I want to see the Sony movies as the same way a lot of people see the Netflix um,
Uh-huh.
shows where it's kind of like, hey, we're in the MCU to us, you know, but like the MCU won't acknowledge us, you know,
Right.
like I'm fine if that ends up being the way the Sony movies play it out,
Yeah,
as
it's like
opposed to it being a separate
Gordy and I
universe.
both went to Gordy and I went to high school with John Mulaney. Now we say we went to high school with
Mm,
John Mulaney. John Mulaney does not say I went to high school with Gordy and Carlos.
exactly.
Hey,
Exactly.
and Gina Rodriguez, all right? We
And
got
Gina Rodriguez. That's
stars.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right. And it's like
Um,
I'd be fine with that. I'd be fine if that's how the Sony movies play it.
Yeah.
Where like according to them, they acknowledge what happens in the MCU, but the MCU doesn't acknowledge what happens in their movies.
Right. I
But
I
if
kind of
don't
it's a
feel like
know.
I
but
kind
if
of
it
feel like the
becomes a
MCU is going to
separate
start picking.
universe, what'd you say?
I think the MCU is going to rake all of it and pick whatever they want, and they'll make it their MCU canon, and then negate the rest. So if they want to keep the Netflix shows, except for they don't want to acknowledge that there was a dragon underneath New
Iron
York
Fist.
City. Yeah, well, yeah. If they just say, oh yeah, we don't want Iron Fist yet. We want Shang-Chi to be our Iron Fist substitute into this, into this dynamic or something. Like I could totally see them doing that.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, but I could also just totally see them, you know, just completely ignoring anything that has happened on any of the Netflix shows and just happen
sure,
to bring in actors who were on those shows
right?
and just be like, yeah, this is Daredevil. Yeah, this is Jessica Jones.
I mean,
And just and
they already brought in Alfred Woodard in Civil War,
yeah, well, right, but she wasn't playing the same character from Luke Cage. I was just
right?
saying that like
Oh, I
like
see, I see.
you could have what's his name, Charlie Cox, play Matt Murdock, but not acknowledge that any of the things that happened on that show happened.
Right?
You know?
Or you
Yeah,
get Evan Peters play Pietro, play a resurrected Pietro, and just have it be a fun casting to get us all super excited.
Exactly.
and even have
Way to
your
bring it
descriptive
way
audio
to bring
not
it
be
all the
that
way home.
descriptive.
Right. It's like you bring the actor in, but you don't have to acknowledge the continuity.
Yeah.
Which is just so evil.
I
If your
mean,
Like
descriptive
punishing.
audio is an unreliable narrator, that's rough.
I mean, supposedly the descriptive audio was an unreliable narrator with regard to previously on WandaVision.
That wasn't descriptive audio. That was like Wanda said a thing that she did not say in the last episode, which is just they just used a different tape. That's all that was. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Like I mean, it is amazing the way that we can watch 30 minutes of an episode and then somehow spend the rest
42,
of
I think it was.
yeah,
I think it was
but
42 this
it was
week.
yeah, 42 minutes, but then spend the rest of a week just
yeah,
speculating as to what that could mean.
pouring over every frame. Yeah,
Yeah.
our Twitter chat is like, I mean, and I'm just as guilty as anyone else in there, just being like, what do you think it means that there were tigers everywhere?
I know.
Because like
funny.
in the last episode, there was just a giant tiger in the middle of the kitchen table. What did that have to do with anything? That was a choice that someone made to put a tiger in the middle of the kitchen table.
Right.
It's funny because I definitely don't think that we're going to be able to do. I mean, even though I'm excited for it, I don't think we're going to be able to do this with Falcon, like we were saying earlier, with
No.
Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Like, it's not. WandaVision is such a dream that I had like when I was a 20-year-old kid, that I was like, man, I hope one day that comics like will be able to be presented as a real thing on TV and in movies, and it'll be super nerdy, and people will realize that people, there was nothing I hated more than comic book movies that were dumbed down for
Right.
audiences. Like people couldn't understand a multiverse.
Hmm.
Like everyone wasn't actually a nerd.
Right.
Yeah, I think that this is the most I've poured over a show since probably since Game of Thrones, but then before that, like
Right.
more into this sci-fi-ish kind of genre since Fringe. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was to me it feels like Lost um even more than Fringe because
Yeah.
Lost had like the people who would like do background research and they would point out the Easter egg and
Yeah.
what the Easter egg could mean. You know, like Fringe definitely had a lot going on with it, but it felt like Lost was more where you like went way outside of the context even the show.
Yes. Jeff
To
Jensen's essays on like, well, this book means this, that you saw it right over the shoulder of this character in this scene. You're like,
yeah,
okay, Jeff, I think you might be reading too much into it.
right.
In my head, I related it to Mad Men, because the care and the ridiculous attention to detail that's
Yeah.
put into every episode reminded me of Mad Men. Like how they took a slinky out of an episode of Mad Men because
Because it hadn't been invented yet in real life.
yeah,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Slinky came out 2 months after the episode was supposed to take place. That was what it made me think of because I always that was one of the things that I loved about Mad Men.
Right.
I think, I mean, so like, but what are the things that we do think are going to mean something on WandaVision? Like, I think it means something that there have been clocks that are missing the number 6. I don't know what it means. I don't know that it necessarily means Mephisto, but like it could. But it also isn't on every clock.
Right.
So why did they do that?
Yeah,
You
I
know?
mean, I think that it's going to be one of those things where once we see it all, once the whole season plays out, we'll be able to rewatch it, and then those things that we pointed out will have their significance. Like,
Yeah.
and then then it just becomes a question of like, did we over focus on certain details? Like, I think that clearly the commercials are worthwhile, right?
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
that clearly the characters from the comics that have cameoed um, on the like not cameoed, but have been like Easter eggs, like will have some kind of significance, but I don't think it would be direct significance as far as like portending that those characters will be on the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just
You know,
I've worked. I mean, I'm not in this particular Twitter chat yet, so maybe this has been
You will
discussed.
be.
Yeah, but I always thought those were just her parents. The two,
maybe.
because it's the same two people, and then clearly, like the last commercial was Lagos paper towels. When you make a mess, you didn't want to. I mean, that one was the
Yeah.
most blunt one that we've seen. But I it's gonna be.
But
It's gonna
also
be,
like the mom from those commercials in the last 2 episodes has had a black daughter and a white daughter. What's that about? Like,
Yeah,
we know that the father's not black. Where did this black daughter come from?
I mean,
And
one might argue that it has some kind of connection to Wanda. I mean, not Wanda, to
T'Challa. We established
to Monica,
Alaska.
to Monica, yeah.
to Monica could be.
Like that, she feels some kind of like kinship and affinity to Monica, and
Right.
and that's why there's a black girl,
That's funny because like it's a detail that I'm not seeing being written about anywhere, but it's like no one noticing that this family in these commercials, it's an all white family with one black daughter. And
Well, I also think that like with the timing of like, the fact that they're moving forward in the decades with the period aspect of it,
Mhm.
that like that's probably the time frame that these commercials would have diversified.
Yeah,
the 70s, you think so?
it's the 80s. It's this one. This week was the 80s.
This
Yeah,
week
this
was the
week was
80s,
the
but the
80s.
black daughter first appears in the 70s episode.
Did she? Oh, I thought this was the first week.
She appears in the Hydra Soak commercial, and then again in the Lagos brand paper towels.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely say the 80s, maybe less so in the 70s, but probably not. I mean, I don't remember. I mean, probably yes. Like I don't remember 100% because I was too young, but like I would imagine that if it started, it probably started in the late 70s.
Like I just remember like in the last 15 years, people being like, I'll never shop at Target because they had an interracial marriage in their commercial.
Sadly, that's never going to go away.
Right.
Well, right.
What I'm saying is like,
No,
yeah,
I mean that part I agree with. Like having an interracial relationship is maybe a little bit more um, controversial than just having like a random black kid. Like,
I will say, wait, didn't Different Strokes start in the 70s?
no, I think that was the early '80s.
Was it? I thought it was like 79. Because I was gonna say Different Strokes made it all okay.
Yeah.
I do think at some point these people in the commercials are going to start talking to us, like, because presumably they're also citizens in this town, right? Like,
I don't know. That's
they
the
have
part
to be
that
somewhere, right?
that's what we don't know. We don't know where they're coming from. Like,
and if
they haven't been
then those are
identified.
the only other two children in the town.
Yeah, they have.
Right,
Well, so next week is supposed to be like a Halloween episode, right?
Yeah.
And like I haven't paid attention. Like, are there kids in the trailer?
I
for
believe
this?
there are. I believe there are.
So this is where we find out if there are really kids or not.
Yeah.
But there may not have been kids this entire time, and now there's going to be kids because Vision said, "Hey, where are the kids?" So she's
Right.
gonna
Manifest a bunch of kids.
But we also know that there should be kids in that town.
Right.
She's going to grab a bunch of young mutants and put them in the town. And then
Well, that's the thing though, is like, where are the kids that are supposed to be there?
Right.
Where are they at? Because unless Westview is a penal colony, there should be children in this town.
Exactly. And there's supposed, I mean, listen, there's supposed to be like thousands of people in that town. We've only seen like 100 of them.
Which is weird because we only see the one street, the one road that leads into Westview. Is like, I feel like there's 60 people in this town.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that they chose to say that there are that many people in that town, but they have not shown us even a fraction of that number means
they're
that
trying to force scope where they can't, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I want to say it's intentional. I want to say that there has to be a time where we see the full scope. Because otherwise why wouldn't they just say it's a town of like 500?
Yeah, Wanda alluded to it where she was talking about all the dental appointments and things like that, running everything. Like, she alluded to there being more than what we've seen. I mean, clearly there has to be, but it's gonna.
I also think that's an interesting conversation on the show where she says, "I don't know how this started."
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like, I feel like that's true.
That scared me because I feel like that's what's going to give her the out to sort of, again, to go back to earlier, to Wally West murdering people, to get her out of it, to be like, well, she was influenced by Mephisto or whatever evil thing it's going to be, instead of us. I would much rather see the story where we're going to deal with Wanda not knowing how to deal with her grief and basically taking however many people are in the town as hostage.
I totally think by the end of this she's going to be redeemed. Honestly, I think she's going to end up being redeemed, and she's going to end up in the care of Doctor Strange.
So I don't think she's going to be fully redeemed by the end of this, because I do think she's going to play a role in Multiverse of Madness. Like, I think by the end of Multiverse of Madness she might be redeemed, but I think that there's a possibility that she'll realize like the error of her ways, and then that she'll either like break a little bit bad at the end of this, or she'll just be a little bit like catatonic, and and someone, whoever the like actual big bad is, will be like capitalizing on her powers.
I think that the way this is going to end is it's going to look like everything is back to normal, and she's going to go into the care of Doctor Strange because they can't contain her, and Doctor Strange will be like, I will show her how to use magic, how to use her powers and harness them and whatever. And then the after credits moment at the end of the season will be that she's opened the rift between the multiverse, and she wasn't even fully aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, I see that part, but I do think that there will, like, in the next couple of weeks, we'll find out that there's like someone like pulling her strings, like not pulling her strings completely, but but pushing her to doing what she's doing.
I
Yeah.
hope not. I hope not. I hope that we get to see the story of an immensely powerful woman who doesn't know how to handle grief, and we get to
Well,
see.
but the thing is, like, I think that's still going to be part of it, but I just think that, like, to the extent that there's more happening that even she is aware of, like, I think there are people who stand to benefit from what she's doing.
Right.
I just don't want to see. I just don't want to see her put in that position of being manipulated so that she can still be a hero. I mean, she may be the Magneto of this world who sort of straddles
Mhm.
both sides. You know, she has. We all understand. I mean, we've all been through. Everyone on Earth has been through that kind of grief where we wish the world would stop and just go back to the way it was, and we would have that person back. And
Yeah.
it's completely relatable. And I'm hoping that the story they tell doesn't need some outside source, because that's something that, like I said, it's universal.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, not to be like super meta, but like at the end of the day, like there has to be someone to be vanquished. There has to be like a villain to be defeated. And
Wanda.
unless you make her the villain that like full out to be defeated and or killed, you know, like someone has to be that. And I think that a lot of people who are fans of the character would say like, yeah, I mean, I want Wanda like to like make mistakes and to show her depth, but I don't want to end with like Doctor Strange defeats Wanda and kills her, you
Yeah.
know?
I don't know if a 10 episode show or however many it is about with each decade being represented as a sitcom needs a big bad at the end to vanquish. Like, this has all been like a wonderful, engaging thought experiment.
Mhm.
Like, it would if it's Mephisto at the end and that's the real bad guy, it would feel like such a cheap cop out at this point.
Mm.
Like in my
Yeah.
I mean, for me, like up to this point, like I'm perfectly acceptable. I've perfectly accepted that like Wanda's made some bad choices, and like she's a badass, and like what she's doing isn't cool, but she hasn't completely crossed into the realm of like full out villain. Like for instance, like in this recent episode, we saw that Hayward was trying to like kill her. If she was the villain, we should be fine with that. But we're not fine with it,
I mean,
right? Like we do want like her to be like redeemed somehow at this point.
it's sort of fitting. In the first X-Men movie, we Magneto was clearly the villain as he was turning people into water or whatever the hell that thing was. But no one wanted Magneto to die because the movie opened with that wonderfully powerful Holocaust scene. You know, it doesn't need to be Oz behind the big screen doing this. I don't know. I'd like to see something different than a big bad, because
Telling you what you're going to get is everything goes back to normal, and then Agnes is going to be like all according to plan, and then you'll see that she can put her hand through a wall or something, and there's the multiverse.
and then
I
she
mean,
pulls out Michael Fassbender and she's like, "Hey, don't worry about it. You were in the Holocaust. Now we don't have to age you."
I mean, I hope it's not Agnes because I'm Team Agnes. Um, but I do think that there will be like a Mephisto or Nightmare or some kind of like magical entity that will basically be like, Wanda did whatever Wanda did, and now like I'm more powerful than I would have been before.
Right.
This is gonna be a great conversation to revisit in 3 weeks.
Exactly.
So who
Um,
do who do we think? Let's just throw out fun things. Who do we think the aerospace engineer is?
I think it's just somebody. I don't think it's anyone from the books.
I think it's
That.
Talos's daughter.
What about you, Gordy?
at first, look, the first thing I told Carlos was, I mean, I wanted to think big and just make it a young Reed Richards before he has powers. But upon reconsideration, I think it might be Riri Williams.
I could see that.
I definitely could see Riri Williams.
The character has already been cast. Like the actor, I forget her
Right.
name, but she's already been cast, and
Yeah.
it's weird that's another show that has a cast, but does not have a screenwriter quite yet.
The only thing that makes me wary of Riri Williams is that Monica's been gone for 5 years.
Right.
Right.
So how does
And
she know Riri?
Right, and Riri's supposed to be young. So
Right.
like, who's the like? It wouldn't line up that it would be someone that she would have known before.
Or Riri was also gone for 5 years.
Right, but like,
she would still be young then. Like she would still be she just came back and much like we saw in Spider-Man, she's not able to drink even though she's actually 22 or whatever, but
right.
she's 16.
I mean, that's possible. I just think that, like, in terms of, like, I think we did the math on that Monica's supposed to be like 30.
30 and between 30 and 35, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so like, why is she like buddies with a teenager? Like, that feels like a
yeah, I mean,
little bit.
And also using a black character to bring in another black character just feels sort of cheap.
No, I mean,
I do think she's 35 years old. She's born in like 83 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I think it could just be like another scientist, and like, I don't know all of my like Marvel Comics scientists. Like, it could be someone from the books, but not a superhero from the books.
If she's born in 83, she's got to be in her 40s then, because isn't the Marvel universe in 2026?
2023.
23, and then she was gone for 5 years.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. I forget about
she's 35, but she should be 40.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be Talos's daughter because she knows Talos's daughter and they were friends, and Talos is clearly still on Earth. So.
But is she? Didn't she go out to space?
Well, I'm saying Talos is on Earth because Talos is there in Far From Home.
Right.
So there are Skrulls on Earth.
I mean,
which would also lead into a later Disney Plus show.
Right.
I mean, and if those Skrulls are on Earth, as the Nick Fury and Maria Hill, why wouldn't their daughter be there as a high-ranking aerospace engineer at whatever sword?
Well, only because the sword that exists now doesn't seem like the sword that existed before Monica left. It seems like it went left. And that version of sword doesn't seem like the kind of organization that would just be like, hey, we've got some Skrulls, in our organization.
Yeah, it sort of feels like it's a new Shield.
Yeah. Well, more than that, it just seems like a group that like got weaponized post Thanos.
Post Blip. Yeah.
Like that they were like about exploration and looking at what was happening out in space, and then the blip happened and they were like, nope, we got to figure out how to create some weapons.
Yeah.
Which is why like the whole like thing that I mentioned before about them like creating another Ultron like is open as a possibility.
Yep.
They definitely dismantled Vision. Like, we know that much based on the scene where we saw that Wanda went in and she took Vision's corpse, that they were doing something with Vision.
Right.
They were playing around with AI and playing around with with like I said, sentient weapons. Like, they definitely have an agenda, and like having the Skrulls be down with that agenda seems unlikely.
Yeah.
Well, at least the good Skrulls. being down with that agenda seems unlikely.
Oh man, this is so much fun.
Yeah.
So much. It's
It's gonna, you know what? It's not gonna be Mephisto. It's not gonna be Nightmare. It's gonna be the Shadow King. Boom, X-Men.
Boom, X-Men.
And it's gonna be the Shadow King from Legion.
I loved Legion. But
Legion
listen,
was so good. It was so weird.
guys, on that note, we should probably bring it home. Like we've been at it for a few hours. Listeners, we'd love to hear your theories. Hit us up at Racial Draft Pod on Twitter. Hit us up with racial.draft on Instagram or on Facebook at the Racial Draft. And everybody list your socials so they can hit you guys up.
Gordy?
Carlos, go.
Okay. I'm at Carlos Freitas Jr. on Twitter. Yeah, just find a Racial Draft post, and then I probably liked it because you don't want to hear me spell my name. I'm also host of the Hey Do You Remember podcast at HDYR Podcast. We're 8 years strong, and you'll want to listen. There's almost 200 episodes worth of movie and TV reviews from stuff that we grew up with. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun doing that show. So check us out, HDYR Podcast on Twitter, and Hey Do You Remember Podcast pretty much wherever you can get your podcasts.
And Gordy, what about you?
And I'm at Gordy924-19552.
That is a lot of numbers, my dude.
Looks like a totally legit screen name.
Listen, because some of us are a part of the evil team here on the Racial Draft Podcast and don't want that much hate mail until at least maybe season 2 of us being here. So, but yeah, if you follow any of the Racial Draft Podcast stuff, I'm all over it, trying to retweet it, trying to talk crap about everybody's picks. And if you can, I would like to know why the Vision has abs, because it doesn't make sense. And I want someone to solve that for me.
I mean, I would like abs, so I totally understand. And
the Spader bot clearly wanted abs, but I don't understand why Vision does. So yeah, tweet me and figure that out if you have a great idea.
And yeah, you can reach me at MTFIII, Michael Torre Ford III, on Twitter. You can also find me at the same on Instagram. But yeah, you can find us all under the Racial Draft umbrella. And yeah, hopefully you guys were entertained by this show. Hopefully you guys are into the WandaVision discussion. We'll move forward with that as the episodes continue. Racial Draft has round 10 should have already kicked off, but we're past midnight. So by the time you hear this podcast, there will already be picks in the 10th round, and hopefully you'll continue to journey with us, and you will make your opinions known about the Racial Draft. We're always here. We're listening for your opinions, and we're ready to keep on moving. Until next time, though, all things are possible.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3.